Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something juicier than a Cold War cafeteria mystery meatloaf. 1950s conspiracy theories that, against all logic, reason, and your grandpa's loud skepticism, actually turned out to be true. Not the tinfoil hat stuff your uncle rants about after Thanksgiving dinner. No, I mean the real ones. The ones that make you pause mid-yawn and go, wait, they did what? So before we get cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this. No pressure. I'm not the FBI in 1957. I don't need to track you. And thank you to everyone who suggested this topic. Your ideas are what keep these stories coming. If you're awake right now, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Somehow it's always 1:43 a.m. for at least 5 of you. Now dim those lights. Switch on a fan for that soft white noise ambience, wiggle down into your blankets, and maybe tuck your feet in just in case the government tries to tap your toes for information. You never know. But before we leap backward into this decade of milkshakes, paranoia, and aggressively pointy furniture, let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered, did your government ever accidentally dose you with LSD just to see what would happen? Did a secret lab ever release something into your city under the guise of urban testing? Have you ever wondered why pigeons stare at you like they're taking notes? Why were your grandparents told not to eat the snow near military bases? Why do some towns suddenly glow at night like they were trying out for a superhero origin story? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in the 1950s, a decade where you can buy a house for the price of a used lawnmower. But at any moment the government might also crash test your neighbourhood with mystery gas and sincerely call it public safety research. Good luck. You wake up to a crisp suburban morning, white picket fences, kids on bikes, and a suspicious army van fogging the air with something that definitely isn't mosquito repellent. In the 1950s, real cities were sprayed with harmless tests that turned out not to be harmless at all, and you, lucky listener, are standing right in the mist. At first it smells almost pleasant, like a watered-down cleaning solution mixed with patriotic optimism. You blink a few times, trying to convince yourself that waking up in a cloud of classified government vapour is just part of normal suburban life. After all, the 50s are the golden age of trust. Trust your neighbours, trust your milkman, trust your government van fogging the block with unknown substances at 7:13 a.m. sharp. You take a cautious step onto your driveway. Dew-glossed grass crunches beneath your saddle shoes, and the fog swirls gently around your ankles like it's auditioning for a low-budget sci-fi movie. Across the street, Mrs. Henderson waves cheerfully while hanging out laundry, blissfully unaware that she's effectively marinating her floral bedsheets in experimental aerosol. She seems fine. But then again, she thought Elvis was a bit intense, so her judgment may be compromised. Let's talk about what's actually happening. In the 1950s, the Army conducted open-air tests in American cities, releasing supposedly safe bacteria and chemicals to study how they spread. You know, casual neighbourhood science. Suburban families were assured these tests were harmless, because nothing says comfort like a classified reassurance. And here you are, breathing in the government's morning surprise like it's part of a balanced breakfast. You glance back at the van. A soldier stands on the back platform, expression neutral, calmly releasing more fog into your cul-de-sac as if he's seasoning a casserole. The machine sputters and hums, mist curling into the sky. If he offered you a pamphlet explaining anything, you might feel better. Instead, he nods politely like someone handing out free samples. Except the sample is air. Let's step inside for a moment. You close the screen door behind you and wipe the fog from your glasses, even though you know full well that whatever you just inhaled is already brainstorming long-term plans in your bloodstream. The kitchen greets you with warm toast, the smell of brewed coffee, and an overwhelming sense of denial. You flip on the radio. The announcer cheerfully explains that everything is fine. Weather's lovely. Economy's booming. Certainly no experimental fog drifting into your ventilation system. Outside, the mist begins to settle, on rooftops, on sidewalks, on Buddy the neighbour's golden retriever, who is currently licking it off the patio like it's snow from a magical new season. Time to run errands. You step back outside, because in the 1950s, nobody hides indoors, not even from mystery clouds. You hop into your pastel-coloured car, which weighs as much as a small barge, and back out of the driveway while trying not to inhale too deeply. The fog hangs over the town square like a strange enchanted veil. People continue their day unfazed, because the American dream waits for no one, not even those breathing in government-sponsored glitter. As you drive, you wonder, is this fog really harmless? Why does the military need to test anything here? And how many times has this happened before you noticed? But then you remind yourself, this is the 1950s. You aren't supposed to ask questions. You're supposed to mow your lawn, host potlucks, and assume the government would never ever do something without your informed consent. That would be absurd. By evening, the fog finally fades, leaving behind only a faint chemical tang and a wave of uneasy curiosity. The sun sets soft and golden over your neighbourhood, casting long shadows across freshly fogged lawns. Kids chase, fireflies, porch lights come on. Everything feels normal again, even though earlier today you were essentially an unwitting participant in airborne science. And that's the subtle horror of it. Nothing seems wrong. No alarms, no warnings, no clipboard-carrying officials at your door. Just a quiet suburb settling into twilight, unaware of what drifted through its streets or how many times history will forget to mention it. But for now you breathe, you exhale, and you try to sleep, hoping tomorrow's fog will just be fog. Sweet dreams. Your day begins with soft humming fluorescent lights and a clipboard-wielding man explaining that today's activity involves mind expansion techniques. The 1950s government is very into LSD, specifically giving it to people who didn't know they were participating, including, unfortunately, you. He smiles with the calm, unsettling enthusiasm of someone who has absolutely practiced this speech in front of a mirror. His glasses reflect the sterile glow overhead, and you get the sense that he hasn't blinked since Truman was president. You shift nervously in your plastic chair, which sticks to the backs of your legs in a way that feels both undignified and deeply personal. Somewhere down the hallway, a typewriter clacks with frantic energy, almost like it already knows what today's incident report will look like. "Now don't worry," the man says, tapping his clipboard as if performing a magic trick. "The compound we're using has shown promising results in terms of psychological elasticity." That is not a comforting phrase. Elastic things snap. Elastic things fly across rooms. Elastic things should not include your mind. Let's take a moment to appreciate your surroundings. The room is small, windowless, and decorated in that classic Cold War colour palette of industrial grey and slightly darker industrial grey. A fan hums in the corner, either to circulate air or politely disperse any screams you might produce. On the table beside you sits a paper cup of water and a sugar cube that is definitely sweating with suspicious intent. This is MK Ultra, the real-life CIA program where researchers ask questions like, what if we expand consciousness? And what if we don't tell anyone? And what if we accidentally rearrange someone's entire personality like a living jigsaw puzzle? They were bold times. The clipboard man gestures toward the sugar cube as though offering you a mint at a fancy restaurant. You hesitate. He does not. "Go ahead," he says cheerfully. "It's important for the experience." That pause did not feel optional. You pick up the cube, which is already halfway dissolved even though you swear you haven't touched it. You place it on your tongue, and within seconds you can feel your brain quietly whispering, "Oh no." Let's shift perspective for a moment. Imagine you've woken up expecting a normal 1950s day filled with safe, predictable activities like ironing, mowing lawns, or being suspicious of the Soviets. Instead, you're now participating in an unsupervised chemical carnival run by men who think ethics is a foreign dessert. The CIA in the 1950s wasn't dabbling. They were committed to exploring human consciousness with the same enthusiasm you have when reorganizing your spice rack at 2 a.m. Back in the room, your senses begin to wobble. The clipboard man's tie appears to be breathing. The fluorescent lights hum in a key you're not entirely sure exists. The water in the paper cup ripples even though there's no breeze. You lean back, trying to remain calm, reminding yourself that millions of people have survived worse, like crimped telephone cords or polyester slacks. "Any unusual sensations?" he asks, scribbling notes that don't match your answers because he isn't actually listening. You try to respond, but the words slide out of your mouth like they're on vacation. He beams. "Excellent. That means it's working." He then wheels over a cart with objects clearly chosen by someone whose only experience with psychology came from carnival mirrors. A rubber duck, a stack of playing cards, a metronome ticking ominously, 2 bananas for reasons no one is willing to explain. Your assignment, apparently, is to observe your reactions. You already know your reaction. Regret. Time becomes untrustworthy. The clock on the wall seems to melt slightly around the edges. Your thoughts loop like a skipping record. Why? How long? Did they give the same sugar cube to the guy before me? He looked unsettled. Finally, after what feels like several lifetimes but is probably 40 minutes, the clipboard man concludes the session. "Great progress today," he says. "We'll see how your subconscious integrates the data." Your subconscious would like to file a complaint. You step outside into the hallway. The air feels brighter, louder, friendlier, like the world has been ironed flat and turned up to maximum saturation. You take a deep breath, partly to calm yourself and partly because your legs no longer recognize each other. As you stumble toward the exit, you realize something deeply comforting. You survived orientation. Unfortunately, this means you're now eligible for Phase 2. Sweet dreams. It's lunchtime, and your school cafeteria proudly serves milk, sandwiches, and the faint knowledge that nuclear testing is happening 3 states over and drifting your way. Enjoy your mac and cheese with a side of airborne isotopes. You slide your metal lunch tray across the counter, the sound ringing out like a tiny atomic gong. The lunch lady gives you a smile that says, "We're all pretending this is normal." Behind her, steam rises from vats of food that look like a science experiment already in progress. But hey, it's the 1950s. Everything is fortified, even the radiation. You find a seat at a long wooden table, the kind polished smooth by decades of anxious elbows. Across from you, your friend Tommy dips his bread into his soup without a care. He's the picture of post-war optimism, blissfully unaware that the chalkboard behind him has a poster reminding students what to do if you see a bright flash. Duck, cover, assume the best. The usual. Let's talk about your lunch today. The mac and cheese seems slightly brighter than last week. Not hot bright, not the sun is leaking onto your plate, but a gentle, suspicious glow, like it attended a motivational workshop and came back with a new attitude. You scoop a forkful and it jiggles like it has hopes, dreams, and a half-life. You take a bite anyway because priorities include survival, friendship, and not complain about free food. In the 1950s, atomic testing was as regular as Monday math quizzes. Nevada lit up like a cosmic birthday candle several times a year, and the fallout drifted east with all the enthusiasm of a dandelion in April. The government insisted everything was perfectly safe, and it must be, because why else would your milk carton have a reassuring cartoon cow printed on the side? You take a sip of that milk, it tastes cold, creamy, and vaguely metallic. Is that just the new refrigeration system, or does this carton have a secret identity as a Geiger counter? Hard to say. The PA system crackled above you, the principal's voice echoing with the kind of calm authority that says, "There is nothing to worry about, and if there was, you should worry quietly." He announces that recess will be indoors today due to wind conditions, which is strange because wind has existed forever, and no one cancelled anything over it until recently. You exchange a glance with Tommy. He shrugs and returns to his glowing macaroni. Let's take in the scene. The cafeteria hums with ordinary life, shrieking laughter, clattering trays, the subtle undertone of existential dread. A group of kids compares their trading cards: cowboys, astronauts, baseball players. One kid proudly shows off a card of an atomic mushroom cloud complete with a fun fact on the back. Collect all 15. Nothing says childhood like cataloguing explosions. Suddenly a lunch monitor walks by carrying a small device, a chunky metal thing with a dial and a needle that dances in mild panic. She calls it a radiation meter, but she holds it like she hopes it won't bite. She casually waves it near a vent. The needle twitches. She frowns. Then she smiles brightly and keeps walking, because this is America, and we do not panic in cafeterias. You poke your fruit cup. The peaches are so orange they look like they could guide ships at night. You decide to eat them anyway. Vitamin C is important. And here's the thing. Everyone else is doing the same. Eating, chatting, planning the weekend. No one questions why the sky looked hazy this morning, or why the school nurse has been giving precautionary pep talks about staying hydrated. In the 1950s, the world might be spinning toward unknown futures, but lunchtime is still lunchtime. If the universe has placed a faint nuclear buzz in your mashed potatoes, that's tomorrow's problem. As you gather your tray and head toward the trash can, you pause by the cafeteria window. The sunlight outside has that shimmering, too bright quality again. Maybe it's just a normal sunny day, or maybe the atmosphere is having an identity crisis. Either way, you survived another atomic lunch, and in the 1950s that counts as a win. Sweet dreams. You sit in a small room with a metal chair, feeling like a test subject in a low-budget sci-fi movie. Spoiler, you basically are. Turns out national security in the 1950s meant seeing how suggestible your brain is after they crank up the weird knobs. The chair beneath you is cold enough to make you reconsider every life choice that led you here, including agreeing to that volunteer opportunity flyer posted at the bus stop. A single overhead bulb buzzes softly, flickering just enough to keep you awake but not enough to feel safe. It's the lighting equivalent of someone tapping you on the shoulder every 30 seconds just to remind you they're still there. A man in a rumpled suit enters, balancing a file thick enough to qualify as a pillow. He doesn't introduce himself, not because he's rude, but because names are apparently classified now. He gives you a gentle smile that says, "Relax, but don't relax too much," and flips open the folder. Inside are pages upon pages of charts, graphs, and what appear to be sketches of the human brain drawn by someone with a loose understanding of anatomy. "Thank you for participating in today's session," he says, in the soothing monotone of a man who's been trained not to alarm people immediately. We'll be exploring cognitive flexibility, perception alteration, and a series of harmless stimuli. You notice he skipped over the word harmless a little too quickly. He gestures toward an object on the table, a small metal device with wires sprouting out like wild hair. It hums. You do not trust objects that hum. This, he says proudly, helps us test neural response patterns. The machine looks like it was assembled from spare radio parts and a toaster. You suspect the main thing it tests is your heartbeat. He places a padded band around your forehead. It tightens. A little too much. You now feel like you're being gently hugged by a robot that hasn't learned its own strength. Now, he continues, we'll start with a simple exercise. He clicks a switch. The room fills with a soft, pulsing tone, like a lullaby composed by someone who has never slept in their life. Your fingers twitch, not dramatically, just a tiny involuntary spasm, like your body is testing its emergency evacuation procedure. The man makes a delighted note on his clipboard. This worries you. You do not want to be the reason a grown man writes subject responds beautifully to auditory distortion. The tone shifts. Suddenly it sounds like someone humming directly into your brainstem. You grip the chair to stay grounded, feeling each metallic rivet against your palms. The air itself seems to vibrate. Even your thoughts feel slightly shook. You try to focus on something comforting. Ice cream, sunshine, the fact that you have not spontaneously combusted so far. But your brain starts throwing out questions like confetti. Are my hands floating? Is the ceiling breathing? Did the light just wink at me? The man doesn't seem alarmed. If anything, he looks thrilled, as if you're proving a hypothesis he bet someone lunch money on. Next comes the visual portion of the experiment. He pulls down a screen and turns on a projector that hums louder than your dishwasher. Strange images appear, shapes, patterns, flashes of light. Some hypnotic, some confusing, some that look suspiciously like subliminal instructions telling you to buy war bonds. You stare, obedient and bewildered, while your brain attempts to decode the experience. Are you being mind-controlled? Are you being evaluated? Or is this just the world's strangest PowerPoint? As the session winds down, the man removes the band from your forehead. Your skin tingles. Your thoughts wobble slightly, like newborn deer on a waxed floor. He pats your shoulder, a gesture meant to comfort, but it feels like he's checking to see whether you're still structurally sound. Excellent work today, he says. You've helped us understand human cognition in ways that will benefit national interests. You nod, mostly because your head is the only part of your body that currently remembers how to move. You step into the hallway, blinking. The world looks normal again. The walls aren't wavering, the floor isn't tilting, and your thoughts have resumed their usual shape. But something feels shifted, like your brain has been gently rearranged alphabetically. As you walk toward the exit, you can't help but wonder, did this session make you more resilient, more cooperative, more suggestible? Hard to say. But one thing is certain. In the 1950s, the CIA wasn't just exploring science. They were exploring you. Sleep tight. Tonight, the Golden Gate glows softly as a mist creeps through the streets. It looks romantic until you realize it's a bacterial cloud released for testing. You're standing in history's strangest bedtime humidifier. The fog curls around your ankles like a cat made of cold vapor and questionable intentions. At first it seems normal. San Francisco is famous for weather that behaves like a moody roommate. But this fog has structure, purpose, a kind of determination fog shouldn't normally possess. You breathe in slowly, the mist chilling your lungs in a way that feels almost poetic, if poetry involved government-issued bacteria. You tighten your coat and step closer to the railing overlooking the bay. The bridge lights shimmer through the haze like golden coins sinking underwater. It's beautiful. Yes, but in the same way a haunted mansion is beautiful, enchanting until you remember what's hiding in the wallpaper. Let's talk about what's happening. In the 1950s, the US military conducted open-air biological tests on unsuspecting American cities to study how fast a pathogen might spread. San Francisco was one of their favorite test zones. The logic? Well, it's foggy anyway. That's the kind of rationale you expect from someone deciding whether they can microwave aluminum, not from national defense planners. As you walk through North Beach, the air feels thicker, almost syrupy. A A street lamp hums overhead, the light stretching through the fog like flashlight beams underwater. A couple walking past you pulls their scarves up over their noses. They think they're just avoiding the usual diesel stink from the cable cars. You know better. You've been cast in a top-secret environmental experiment without signing any paperwork. In a quieter alley, a fisherman leans against his truck, scowling at the sky. "Fog's too heavy tonight," he mutters. "Won't catch anything in this soup." You nod politely, resisting the urge to inform him that, technically, he just inhaled several trillion tiny co-stars of this evening's performance. The scent in the air is faint but strange, not earthy like normal fog, not salty like ocean air. More like the sterile tang of a freshly cleaned hospital corridor, mixed with a hint of wet metal. You take shallow breaths, partly out of caution, and partly because your nose is trying to file a complaint. Let's head toward Chinatown. The glowing red lanterns seem dimmer tonight, their warm halos swallowed by the haze. Shopkeepers sweep their stoops, unaware that tiny invisible particles are drifting past their brooms with all the carefree grace of confetti at a parade. You pass a bakery window. The sweet smell of steamed buns wafts through the mist, and for a moment everything feels normal again, comforting, familiar, until you remember the bakery wasn't on the guest list for this experiment either. The fog thickens the farther downhill you go. By the time you reach Market Street, your hair is damp, your skin feels dewy, and your jacket has absorbed enough moisture to qualify as a sponge. People hurry along the sidewalks, newspaper hats flapping in the wind, completely unaware that they could technically be considered lab rats in mid-century outerwear. A cable car rattles past, bell dinging proudly in defiance of the murky air. The conductor rings it twice, once for caution, once because even he can feel something is off tonight. You step aboard, finding a seat by the window. The fog swirls around the car as it climbs the hill, giving the whole scene a dreamy quality, like you're inside a snow globe designed by someone with a questionable sense of humour. At the top of the hill, the fog finally begins to thin. You step off, gaze over the city, and watch the mist snake through the streets below. It is quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel part of a secret you didn't want to know. Tonight, San Francisco feels like a postcard from another world, mysterious, shimmering, and slightly contaminated. You take one last look at the glowing fog drifting across the bay. It's beautiful, it's eerie, and it's definitely not in the tourism brochures. Sleep well, and maybe don't breathe too deeply. You're invited to a friendly neighborhood barbecue, hot dogs, potato salad, and the guy flipping burgers is definitely a rocket scientist with an accent and a suspicious past. And yes, this really happened. The smell of charcoal drifts through the air, mixing with the unmistakable scent of suburban pride. Freshly mowed lawns, lighter fluid, and the faint odour of geopolitical moral compromise. You walk up the driveway balancing a tray of devilled eggs, trying not to look directly at the man in the neatly pressed short-sleeved button-down whose name tag reads Werner. He waves cheerfully, his smile is warm, his handshake is firm, his resume classified. You take a seat at the picnic table, which is covered in a red and white checkered cloth that screams Americana. Kids run through sprinklers nearby, shrieking with laughter. A dog chases a frisbee. It's all painfully wholesome, if you can ignore the fact that one of your neighbours definitely helped design rockets for a regime you discussed in high school history class under the heading Evil Things We Should Never Do Again. Let's talk about why he's here. In the 1950s, Operation Paperclip brought over 1,600 German scientists, engineers and technicians to the United States, many of whom had, let's say, deeply concerning prior employers. The logic was simple. If America didn't grab them, the Soviets would. And in the Cold War, even moral lines came with dotted edges. You sip your lemonade, trying to appear casual, while Werner enthusiastically explains how aerodynamics influence grill smoke. His accent thickens when he gets excited. He gestures toward the sky with a pair of tongs like he's giving a TED talk on missile trajectories. You nod politely, doing mental gymnastics to reconcile the man teaching you how to prevent flare-ups with the knowledge that he once helped design things that cause significantly bigger flare-ups. Your host calls everyone over for food. You line up behind a family you've never met before, one of the many new arrivals on your block since the government started quietly seeding neighbourhoods with talent. You overhear snippets of conversation, ballistics, research funding, classified facility downstate, and the ever-popular, I can't say more about that. This is the kind of barbecue where everyone's hobbies sound like potential war crimes. The potato salad is excellent though, so there's that. You sit down with your plate, watching Werner meticulously assemble his burger with the precision of someone who once calibrated rocket fuel. Lettuce aligned, tomato centered, bun rotated for aerodynamic symmetry. He takes a bite, nods contentedly, and begins telling a group of dads about his previous work in Europe. They listen politely, unaware that previous work may be doing some Olympic-level heavy lifting in that sentence. Let's shift the scene. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the neat suburban lawns. Fireflies blink lazily in the bushes. Werner's wife, who speaks 5 languages and refuses to discuss the years 1939 to 1945, brings out a tray of cookies shaped like stars. A child asks Werner if he can help with a school science project. Werner beams. "Of course! I love rockets!" Every adult within earshot shares a quick, subtle glance. A glance that says, "Should we let him?" And then another glance that says, "Well, the Soviets already know everything anyway." As the evening cools, your neighbourhood settles into its usual cosy rhythm. Sprinkler clicks, crickets chirping, the quiet hum of secrets gently simmering beneath polite small talk. On the surface, it's just another American suburb. But beneath the tidy hedges and matching mailboxes lies a strange truth. Your community is part of a global chess match being played with scientists, blueprints, and a whole lot of denial. Werner waves goodbye as you leave, smiling as if nothing about this situation is unusual. As if families all across the country weren't currently hosting impromptu history contradictions disguised as friendly neighbours. You walk home under the soft glow of streetlights, thinking about how strange it is to live in a time where national security looks so much like a potluck. You survive the barbecue, you survive the potato salad, and you survive sitting next to a man whose career spans both NASA pioneer and ethically complicated footnote. Sleep tight. Your neighbourhood is in very technically skilled hands. You stretch, sip your morning coffee, and notice a strange clicking noise in your lamp. Relax. It's only your friendly local surveillance program, because nothing says 1950s comfort like being monitored in your own living room. The sound is subtle at first, just a soft tick, 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 like a polite beetle asking if it can borrow a cup of sugar. You lean closer, forehead crinkling, and the clicking stops. You straighten up. It starts again. You lean in. Silence. You lean out. Click. Congratulations. You're in a one-on-one tango with your table lamp, and from the looks of it, the lamp is winning. In the 1950s, home surveillance wasn't just a paranoid fantasy. It was practically a hobby for certain government agencies. Back then, privacy was considered more of a suggestion than a right. If the government wanted to know whether you preferred jazz or polka, they'd find out. If they wanted to know whether you were secretly a communist sympathizer because you read books without pictures, they'd definitely find out. And your home decor? The perfect hiding place for their curiosity. You wander through your living room, sipping your coffee like you're in a noir film and someone just told you that your toaster might be an informant. The doily on your side table flutters slightly from the breeze, or is it transmitting? Hard to say. The lamp clicks again, almost self-conscious this time, as if trying to pretend it wasn't caught mid-spy. Let's talk about the decor for a moment. Your house is a shrine to 1950s optimism. Patterned wallpaper, gleaming wood furniture, shag rugs that could hide an entire family of squirrels, and appliances heavy enough to qualify for military service. Each object seems innocent, until you remember that tiny microphones could be tucked inside radios, inside lamps, inside ashtrays. You look at your ashtray now. It looks back. Across the room, your radio sits quietly on the shelf. Normally you'd flip it on to hear morning, cartoons disguised as news reports. But today the silence feels safer. You've read enough newspapers to know the government had a habit of planting bugs anywhere people gathered. Offices, bars, diner booths, your neighbour's garage because he once said he didn't trust mayonnaise. Nothing was off limits. You take a seat on the sofa, which makes a disheartening groan. For a second you wonder if that sound might also be monitored. Maybe someone miles away is writing notes like, "Subject sits, possible signs of dissent, poor posture." You sigh. The clicking resumes. Let's follow it. You crouch beside the lamp, squinting like you're inspecting a crime scene. The lampshade is slightly crooked. You straighten it. The clicking grows bolder, like it's applauding your efforts. You carefully lift the shade, and there it is. A tiny metal disc, tucked neatly against the bulb socket, with a few thin wires disappearing down the base. You're not an electrician, but you're very sure this is not how lamps normally look. You sit back on your heels, coffee still in hand, and exhale slowly. The absurdity of it all sinks in. You're a completely ordinary person. Your greatest acts of rebellion involve forgetting to defrost the chicken or returning library books a day late. And yet, here you are, starring in your own covert surveillance drama, because a government agency somewhere is afraid you might be harbouring radical thoughts, like coffee should be served hot or people deserve basic privacy. The funny thing, you're not even mad. It's too early for rage. Your coffee hasn't hit yet. Instead, you feel oddly flattered. Someone, somewhere, finds you interesting enough to monitor. As the morning sun filters through the curtains, you calmly unplug the lamp and carry it to the kitchen counter. You place it down gently, like a misbehaving pet. You tap it once. It clicks defiantly. You look around your home one more time, your clock, your bookshelf, your innocent ceramic, figurines, and you realise that any of them could be talking behind your back. But this is the 1950s. Everyone is talking behind everyone's back. It's practically community bonding. So you finish your coffee, straighten your pyjamas, and open the blinds. If the government wants a show, you might as well give them good lighting. And with that, you start your day under careful supervision. A sonic boom rocks your window, but don't worry, the official explanation is weather phenomena. In the 1950s, everything suspicious was apparently caused by clouds. Your coffee sloshes over the rim of your mug as the glass panes rattle, like they're reconsidering their attachment to the house. You pause mid-sip, staring at the window as though it might offer a comment, an apology, or at least a heads-up next time. Outside, the sky looks perfectly innocent. Blue, calm, soft streaks of cirrus drifting lazily like they're auditioning for a postcard. Nothing about the weather suggests violent atmospheric tantrum, and yet here you are, mopping coffee off your pyjama pants. You step outside to investigate because that's what responsible citizens do in the 1950s. When something potentially catastrophic happens, they go look at it without any plan whatsoever. The air smells normal. Birds chirp, unfazed. Mrs. Carter next door stands on her porch holding her cat like a furry shield, both of them wearing the same expression. What in Roosevelt's name was that? A few minutes later, your radio crackles to life inside. Local authorities report the noise was caused by atmospheric conditions. There it is. The official line. The explanation used so often it may as well be embroidered on a decorative pillow. Weather. Let's unpack this. In the 1950s, the military was busy testing everything. Planes, bombs, rockets, prototypes, secret prototypes, and things no one wanted to classify because they looked like they were built out of spare lawnmower parts. And when any of these experiments rumbled across suburban America like irritated thunder gods, the military had a simple rule: blame the sky, even when the sky was clearly innocent. You stroll toward the mailbox pretending you're just getting the paper and not actively seeking clues about what just shook your neighborhood awake. The ground still feels like it's holding a tiny memory of the boom, the way a carpet remembers being danced on. You glance at the sky, again, like maybe this time you'll spot a guilty-looking cumulus drifting away quickly. Mrs. Carter calls over, "Must be a storm front." You look at her. You look at the cloudless sky. You nod politely because neither of you wants to admit you're thinking the same thing. The military is testing something again, and they don't want us to know what it is. Suddenly, a second rumble rolls over the neighborhood, lower, longer, as though a giant invisible bowling ball is rolling across the upper atmosphere. Your mailbox vibrates. Somewhere behind you, a car alarm from 3 decades in the future might have gone off, if cars had alarms yet. You freeze. So does Mrs. Carter's cat, which looks personally offended by this development. And then silence. A perfect, cinematic silence. Thick enough that you can hear your own thoughts rehearsing a formal complaint. You turn just as your newspaper lands on the driveway with a soft thwap. The headline reads, "New weather patterns baffle experts." You sigh. Even the press is in on this cosmic charade. Let's talk about what really happened. In the 1950s, test flights frequently broke the sound barrier, scattering sonic booms across unsuspecting towns like party favours. Experimental aircraft, many of which looked like flying triangles, misshapen darts or metal boomerangs, tore across the sky faster than like gossip at a bridge club. And whenever people understandably panicked at the window-shattering explosions, the military calmly pointed at the clouds and said, "That one. Imagine explaining this to future generations. Grandma, why did your window shatter in 1954? Oh, sweetheart, it was windy. By noon the birds have regained their confidence, and you've mostly regained your hearing." You sweep up a few fallen knickknacks and try to pretend everything is normal. But you can't help feeling like the sky's holding on to a secret, one shaped like a supersonic aircraft doing things no cloud has ever done. Just before sunset you hear one last distant boom, softer this time, almost apologetic. You look up, squinting, but there's nothing there. Only sky, only weather. Only a very convenient excuse drifting across America like a well-practiced lie. You lock your door for the night, switch on a lamp, and settle into your chair. If the military wants to test gravity again tomorrow, you hope they'll at least wait until you've finished your coffee. Sleep well and don't let cirrus clouds fool you. You walk past the huge metal tower outside town and your fillings buzz ominously. It's not your imagination. Classified experiments really did pump strange frequencies into the air to see what would happen to, well, everyone. At first, you chalk it up to a strange coincidence. Maybe your dentist over-tightened something. Maybe you're dehydrated. Maybe the tower has always hummed like a bored refrigerator and you just never noticed. But as you get closer, the buzz becomes unmistakable, like a tiny jazz band warming up inside your molars. You pause, pressing your tongue against the offending tooth, but the vibration continues, steady and unnerving, like a polite electrical handshake. The tower looms above you, tall and skeletal against the pale 1950s sky. During the day it looks harmless, almost patriotic, just another piece of Cold War-era architecture that no one questions, because questioning things is how you end up on a list. But as the sun, dips behind it, the structure takes on a quiet menace. Each metal strut seems to hum. Each cable vibrates faintly. The whole thing feels alive in the way only government equipment and haunted amusement parks can. Let's talk about why you're buzzing. In the 1950s, classified research teams were fascinated with radio waves, electromagnetic fields, and anything that might, according to their notes, interact with human physiology in interesting ways. The phrase interesting ways is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. You resume walking, mainly because the sidewalk is not an appropriate place to contemplate national secrecy, and partially because the buzzing grows louder when you stand still. A breeze rustles the grass at the base of the tower, carrying with it a faint warmth that doesn't feel natural. Radio waves technically shouldn't feel warm, but try telling that to your teeth. A man in overalls steps out of a small concrete building nearby, wiping his hands on a rag. He gives you a friendly nod, the kind of nod that says, "I definitely know things you don't, and I'm absolutely not allowed to tell you any of them." You nod back like you're part of the secret, even though your primary current concern is whether your molars are about to melt. As you continue down the road, you notice how the world subtly shifts the farther you get from the tower. The buzzing fades, colours seem less saturated. Birdsong returns to normal pitch instead of that alarming, slightly robotic trill you swear you heard a moment ago. Even your thoughts feel less crowded. You hadn't realised until now that your brain had been holding its breath in self-defence. Reaching a quiet patch of road, you glance back over your shoulder. The tower stands perfectly still, as if pretending innocence. But you know better. Families in your town have complained for weeks, radios turning on by themselves, dogs refusing to walk near the tower, Mrs. Henderson's hairdryer emitting Morse code. The official explanation? Routine signal testing. The town collectively shrugged because shrugging is a patriotic duty. Let's head home. Inside, you flip on the radio for some comforting background noise, but the station is full of static. Not normal static. This static feels intentional, patterned, almost rhythmic. You turn the dial. More static. Another turn. A burst of what sounds like a man whispering in a language you don't recognise before the signal dissolves again. You turn the radio off. It turns itself back on. You turn it off again. It waits a beat and then clicks back on, humming the same frequency that rattled your teeth earlier. You take a deep breath and unplug the radio entirely. It dies with a spark that feels mildly offended. Performing a thorough sweep of your house, you check every appliance for suspicious humming, vibrating, or gently judging your lifestyle choices. Everything seems normal, though you catch your refrigerator humming the towers, tone for a half second before settling back into its usual purr. By bedtime, your teeth have stopped buzzing, your radio has stopped rebelling, and the tower outside town stands silhouetted against the night like a giant metallic question mark. You crawl under your blankets and let your body relax, feeling the last traces of static fade from your bones. You survived another day under the watchful eye and ear of Cold War science. Sleep softly and try not to dream in frequencies. Your morning subway ride feels normal until you notice men in suits releasing test particles to study how fast fake pathogens spread. Commuting was already stressful. The 1950s made it an Olympic sport. You grip the overhead rail as the train rattles forward, metal wheels screaming like a caffeinated banshee down the tunnel. The car is packed with half-awake commuters, businessmen smelling faintly of aftershave and desperation, women in bright lipstick clutching handbags like emotional support, animals, and one child quietly licking a lollipop in a manner that suggests he trusts absolutely nothing happening around him, and he's right not to. You shift your stance as the train jerks, trying to keep your balance while a newspaper headline catches your eye. Subway renovations planned, which is 1950s code for something is happening and we definitely won't tell you what it is. You shrug and look toward the far door just in time to see two men in identical grey suits step on board, holding sleek metal canisters that absolutely do not contain hairspray. They stand silently for a moment, too silently. Then one unscrews the top with the kind of calm confidence only possessed by people who are definitely not supposed to be doing this in public. A faint puff of white dust escapes like a sneeze from a ghost. The other man murmurs something and checks his wristwatch. You blink. No one else reacts. Mrs. Lipstick keeps knitting. Aftershave Man keeps pretending to read. The child drops his lollipop on the floor and simply whispers, "Oh no, let's talk about what's going on." In the 1950s, the US government conducted covert biological dispersal tests on public transit systems. Yes, including subways. To study how pathogens or simulated agents might spread in crowded spaces. They used harmless substances like fluorescent powders and bacteria they claimed were safe. They also claimed carrots improved night vision, so take that as you will. Back on the train, the canister-wielding gentleman steps aside as the dust floats delicately into the air. It glitters under the flickering fluorescent lights, settling onto coats, hats, curls, cufflinks, and the spirit of public trust in general. It's like being inside a snow globe designed by a mad epidemiologist. You take a shallow breath, hoping to minimize your participation in today's experiment. The air tastes slightly chalky. Like someone dissolved a blackboard into your lungs, you adjust. Your scarf over your nose in a subtle act of rebellion. It does nothing. The train slows as it approaches the next station. The dust drifts lazily, carried by the movement of bodies and the impatient sighs of commuters. A man sneezes. Everyone flinches. The men in suits scribble something in notebooks. As the doors slide open, a new wave of passengers floods in, unknowingly stepping into a cloud of invisible science. One of the men in suits gives the car a satisfied nod. You find that worrying. You find everything about this worrying. You wonder if it's too late to move to a farm and befriend goats instead. You grip the overhead bar and let yourself sway with the train as it lurches forward again. The dust has started to cling to surfaces, outlining fingerprints on poles and forming faint smudges on newspaper pages. You can almost hear a distant narrator saying, "Here we observe the modern commuter in its natural habitat, navigating both traffic and airborne experiments. Still life goes on." A woman hums softly. Someone unwraps a sandwich, releasing yet another questionable substance into the carriage. The men in suits exit at the next station, leaving behind a fine coat of mystery on everyone. As your stop approaches, you exhale slowly, reminding yourself that this is the 1950s. You don't ask questions unless you enjoy paperwork. You step off the train, brushing a thin layer of powder off your coat, and emerge into the station's tiled corridor. The crowd moves with its usual sleepy determination, blissfully unaware of the experiment happening around them and on them. You head toward the stairs, telling yourself that everything is fine, everything is normal, and your lungs probably won't glow in the dark. Probably. You climb into the sunlight, take a deep cleansing breath, and hope that today's harmless test really was harmless. But deep down, you know better. Welcome to Public Transportation Cold War Edition. A pigeon stares at you from a telephone wire. He knows things. In the 1950s, animals were drafted into espionage programs, and you live in a world where a bird might have higher clearance than you do. His head tilts slowly, suspiciously, like he's assessing your threat level. His beady eyes track your movements with unnerving precision. You take one step forward. He takes one mental note. You adjust your coat. He adjusts his feathers. You're not entirely sure who's supervising whom at this point, but the power dynamic is no longer in your favour. The bird looks ordinary enough, grey feathers, plump body, tiny pink feet, but there's something in his stance that says he's on the clock, and he probably is. Because in the 1950s, intelligence agencies spent a surprising amount of time wondering how animals could be used for surveillance. Dogs, cats, dolphins, ravens, and yes, pigeons, especially pigeons. They had the ideal resume: stealthy, numerous, hard to fire, already comfortable, pooping on government property. You keep walking down the sidewalk, trying to focus on your errands, but you can feel the pigeon's gaze drilling into the back of your neck like a telepathic stapler. The breeze picks up, rustling leaves and jingling the little aluminum tabs tied to telephone poles. The pigeon flutters down to a lower wire, getting a closer look at you, as if evaluating whether you can be trusted with classified information. Spoiler, probably not. Let's talk about why this bird is watching you like you owe him money. In the 1950s, the CIA ran a number of animal-based intelligence projects. Some involved strapping tiny cameras to pigeons so they could take aerial photos. Others aimed to train them to follow specific flight paths or deliver equally specific microfilm capsules. Pigeons were literally the drones of their day, slower, fluffier, and significantly more judgmental. You pass a lamppost where another pigeon sits. He gives the first pigeon a nod. They're coordinating. You're now part of an avian staff meeting. The two feathered agents watch as you step toward the corner grocery store. Every move you make gets filed away in their tiny yet efficient spy brains. Your pace, your posture, the fact that you definitely bought too many canned peaches last week. Nothing escapes their notice, not even your questionable fashion choices. Inside the grocery store, you breathe a sigh of relief. The fluorescent lights hum softly, and the air smells like produce sprayed aggressively with optimism. You pick up a basket and pretend you're safe, but as you turn toward the window, you see him. Pigeon number 1 still perched outside, staring in with the intensity of someone reviewing confidential documents. That's when you remember. Pigeons were used for reconnaissance because they were reliable, loyal, hard-working, tireless, which is more than you can say for some humans on federal payrolls. The government even researched ways to enhance pigeon performance, including reward systems, conditioning, and increasingly complex missions. You imagine a high-ranking official standing proudly in front of a small podium saying, "Gentlemen, these birds will win the Cold War," and every pigeon in the back nodding solemnly. You carry your groceries home, the paper bag rustling with each step. The pigeons follow you, casually of course. Not enough to draw suspicion, but enough that you notice their shadows gliding just behind yours. One lands on a mailbox, cooing softly. Another hops along a fence, pretending to be interested in a crumb while clearly monitoring your movements. By the time you reach your house, you've accepted your new reality. You're being watched by creatures who can't blink one eye at a time, but can absolutely document your every move. You close your door gently, peek through the blinds, and see the pigeons still there, alert, focused, fully committed to their patriotic duty. One puffs his chest, proudly, as if to say, "Freedom isn't free, citizen." You set down your groceries, exhale slowly, and whisper a quiet thank you to your feathered security team. After all, in the 1950s, even the birds were on assignment. Sleep well, and don't forget to salute the pigeon on your way out tomorrow. You step outside to admire the stars, except the streetlights seem brighter, the ground slightly luminescent, and your neighbour casually mentions uranium testing, like it's weather chat. You pause mid-step, your slipper hovering above the porch like it's waiting for permission to land. The night air is cool, calm, and carrying the faint metallic tang of something that definitely didn't come from your garden. The street lamps glow with an unusual vigour, like someone swapped out the bulbs for miniature suns. Even the pavement has a soft sheen, as if it moisturised before bed. Your neighbour, Mr. Callahan, leans on his rake with all the casual grace of a man who has fully accepted that his property taxes may now include glow maintenance. He waves at you, cheerful despite the fact that the entire block looks like it's been lightly dusted in fairy powder. "Evening," he calls. "Looks like they've been testing again. Uranium or something. Beautiful night, isn't it?" He says it with the same tone someone might use to comment on a gentle breeze. You nod slowly, because in the 1950s, nodding is safer than asking questions, especially when uranium is involved. You walk down your front steps and onto the sidewalk, which seems to radiate a faint warmth, just enough to make you wonder whether the concrete has achieved sentience. The houses on your street glow softly too, their white shingles catching the ambient shimmer like tiny suburban lanterns. It's peaceful, it's eerie, it's probably a health hazard. Let's talk about why your town is giving off the vibe of a mild science fiction dystopia. In the mid-20th century, nuclear testing was conducted with a certain exuberance. The government detonated devices in the desert and then politely watched where the fallout went, like children releasing a balloon to see what happens. Spoiler, what happened was glowing towns, glowing soil, glowing laundry, glowing cows, and glowing citizens who were told that mild luminescence was perfectly normal. As you stroll past the Johnsons' house, you notice their rose bushes glowing faintly pink. Beautiful, yes, but also looking suspiciously like they've been photosynthesizing gamma rays. Mrs. Johnson steps outside holding a glowing watering can, the metal so bright it could guide ships. "Just look at these colours," she gasps. "Nature is amazing, isn't it?" You don't have the heart to tell her that it's not nature, it's nuclear physics doing stand-up comedy. A soft breeze rustles the trees overhead, showering you with a sprinkling of leaves that sparkle like confetti. You brush one off your shoulder and it leaves a faint trail of shimmer like radioactive glitter. Under the glow of the street lamps, your shoes look freshly polished even though you're positive they were covered in dust this morning. Halfway down the block you spot a group of kids playing hopscotch on the glowing sidewalk, their chalk grid illuminated like a neon sign advertising free future health risks. One of them proudly announces he can see his shadow even without the street lamps. Another says his hair glows in the dark now and he kind of likes it. At the corner store, the owner sits outside on a folding chair, arms crossed, watching lightning bugs zigzag across the unnaturally bright street. The insects look confused. They blink their tiny lights, then look around and seem to say, "Oh, we're redundant now." He nods to you. "Things sure are bright tonight," he mutters. "Power company says voltage fluctuations. Weather office says humidity. Government says nothing at all." He shrugs. So must be the weather. You both share a long, knowing silence. Let's be honest. Your town is glowing because someone somewhere pressed a button they shouldn't have, and now you're living in one of history's strangest nightlights. But the funny thing, you're getting used to it. Humans are adaptable. Give us a glowing lawn and we'll mow it anyway. Give us luminous flower beds and we'll enter them in the county fair. As you head home, the sky seems darker than usual, swallowed by the brightness below. You take one last look around, the warm, humming glow of your neighbourhood, the soft, eerie shimmer of the soil, the distant sparkle of particles drifting lazily through the air. It's beautiful, it's unsettling, and it's definitely not in the brochure your town hands out to visitors. You step inside, close the door gently and let the night hum on without you. Sleep well and try not to glow too brightly under the covers. The waves shimmer beautifully at sunset, too beautifully. Congratulations, you're witnessing one of history's strangest bacterial dispersal tests disguised as scenic ambience. You stand at the edge of the pier, wrapped in a sweater that's doing its best against the cool Pacific breeze. The sky's painted in streaks of orange, pink and dusky lavender. The gulls wheel overhead, calling out like cranky old men arguing about fishing rights. On the surface, it's a perfect California evening, except for the water, which gleams just a little too intensely, like the bay got a makeover from a radioactive fairy godmother. The sparkle isn't natural. Oh sure, water reflects light, but this looks like someone poured glitter into the ocean and said nothing about it for national security reasons. You lean over the railing, watching ripples carry shimmering flecks that seem to pulse with their own quiet rhythm. It's mesmerizing, like a screensaver, but with higher stakes. Let's talk about what's happening beneath the glitter. In the 1950s, the US military conducted something called Operation Sea Spray, a biological test where they released supposedly harmless bacteria into the air and water around San Francisco to study how well they spread. The idea was to simulate what an enemy attack might look like by performing one themselves, but without all the paperwork that would normally accompany mass exposure events. Back on the pier, the breeze picks up, carrying with it the salty smell of the ocean mixed with something else. Something faintly sweet. You take a cautious sniff, then immediately regret it. The air tastes oddly metallic, like licking a spoon straight from the dishwasher. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. You tell yourself that a shimmering bay is perfectly normal in a decade where people painted their entire kitchens pastel pink. A fisherman hauling in his nets grunts as he passes you. Water's been shinier lately, he mutters, wiping his hands on his jeans. Saw something weird floating this morning. Thought it was jellyfish. Wasn't jellyfish. He doesn't elaborate. You do not ask. This is the 1950s, and you've learned that answers are scarier than questions. As the sun dips lower, the water glows brighter, a dazzling mirror reflecting the neon lights flicking on across the shoreline. Couples stroll along the promenade, admiring the view, unaware that each gentle wave carries microscopic hitchhikers, courtesy of the US Army's favourite pastime, improvised germ glitter bombs. You take a seat on a nearby bench that creaks sympathetically beneath you. A family nearby takes photos with their bulky camera, the father cheerfully declaring he's captured the most beautiful sunset in months. You wonder if he'll notice later that his negatives have a faint, suspicious sparkle. Down the beach, children chase each other along the water's edge, their footprints glowing faintly before being washed away. A dog bounds joyfully into the surf, splashing in waves that look like someone spiked them with glow-in-the-dark paint. He emerges coated in sparkles and shakes enthusiastically, much to his owner's horror and mild enchantment. He looks like a disco ball with fleas. The wind shifts again, and for a moment everything becomes quiet. Still. The air hangs heavy, warm and curious, like the world itself is holding its breath. You exhale slowly, because someone around here has to. A distant military ship moves across the horizon, sunset reflecting off its hull like a wink. It's subtle, but you know better now. That ship didn't just happen to be there. That ship is the reason the water looks like a science fair project. That ship is why your bay is doing its impression of a low-budget fantasy landscape. As the last rays of daylight drip below the horizon, the shimmering dimly persists, glowing like an afterthought, one final reminder of the evening's silent experiment. You rise from the bench, dust off your sweater, and make your way back up the pier. Tomorrow the bay will probably sparkle again, and the day after, and no one will say anything, because it's the 1950s, and in the 1950s, even the ocean kept secrets. Sleep well, and maybe avoid drinking the tap water for a day or two. You open wide for a routine checkup, and your dentist whispers. You might feel a tingling sensation or mild enlightenment. Dentistry in the 1950s occasionally doubled as covert research. You freeze mid-jaw stretch, staring at the ceiling where a faded poster of a smiling cartoon tooth gives you an encouraging thumbs up. It's small comfort when the man holding a drill casually hints, you may leave this appointment with more than a cleaning. He adjusts his mask, which is really just a thin piece of cloth pretending to provide safety, and rolls his stool a little closer. His eyes sparkle, not with malice, but with that dangerous gleam possessed by people who've been given access to experimental equipment and very flexible ethical guidelines. The chair beneath you reclines with a metallic groan, lowering you into the kind of vulnerable angle usually reserved for sacrifices. A bright lamp clicks on overhead, blinding you with all the subtlety of an interrogator in a noir film. "Just relax," your dentist murmurs, which is a sentence guaranteed to do the opposite. He reaches for a tray of gleaming tools that look less like dental instruments and more like prototypes from an ambitious but underfunded sci-fi movie. Let's talk about why your dentist is acting like a mad scientist with excellent hygiene. In the 1950s, intelligence agencies occasionally collaborated with private professionals, doctors, therapists, dentists, asking them to observe patients or participate in small behavioral trials. Most politely declined. Others, well, they were intrigued. They were curious. They loved science perhaps too much, and a few couldn't resist the sweet, sweet thrill of applying for government. Grants. Your dentist hums as he examines your molars, tapping each one like he's checking the ripeness of fruit. "Beautiful enamel," he says warmly. "Perfect candidate." Candidate for what exactly? You attempt to ask, but he's already placing a suction tube in your cheek, effectively silencing your existential dread. He picks up a small metal device with wires trailing from its handle. You swear it wasn't there a moment ago. He flicks a switch, and the faintest electric buzz fills the room. "A new diagnostic tool," he explains. "Measures things." He doesn't specify which things. In 1950s medical terms, that usually means something we haven't named yet and may not fully understand. He applies the tool gently to your tooth. The buzz travels through your skull like a tiny electrical raccoon scurrying through your cranial wiring. Light tingling, mild discomfort, an unexpected urge to recite your childhood home address. All normal, probably. The dentist nods to himself, scribbling notes on a clipboard. Fascinating response. You have no idea what your response was, but apparently it was fascinating enough to enter into a folder discreetly labelled Research, Project Blue Smiles. He moves on to polishing, but even that seems unusually intense. The spinning brush vibrates with more force than necessary, and you swear you can hear faint radio static inside your head. He pauses, tilts his own head thoughtfully and asks, "Do you hear anything unusual? Perhaps music?" You shake your head vigorously. You do not want to validate whatever hypothesis he's chasing today. Halfway through the appointment, he leans back, folds his hands, and casually asks a series of questions that sound suspiciously like a psychological survey. How often do you dream? Would you say you're easily influenced? Do you ever feel watched? You respond as best as you can with cotton in your mouth, offering muffled uncertainty. He nods, pleased. Excellent baseline. Baseline 4. What? You may never know, and frankly you might sleep better that way. Finally he removes the tools, wipes your chin and announces the visit's over. No cavities, no plaque, no enlightenment, mild or otherwise. You sit up slowly, feeling slightly lighter, slightly tingly, and slightly suspicious of your renewed urge to floss twice a day. As you leave, he hands you a lollipop and a folded pamphlet titled Post-Experimental Comfort Tips. You decide not to open it. The door closes behind you with a soft click, and the buzzing in your skull fades with it. You survived. Your teeth survived. Your privacy debatable. But in the 1950s, that's just another day at the dentist. The teacher dims the lights. A cheerful narrator explains why safety drills might require you to hide under your desk for reasons that definitely won't protect you. The 1950s love calm denial. The film strip rattles to life with a loud clack, 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 like it's trying to warn you of what's coming but is contractually obligated to remain upbeat. Dust dances through the projector beam in lazy spirals, turning the classroom into a snow globe of denial. You and your classmates sit quietly, hands folded, eyes wide, pretending not to notice that the cartoon turtle on screen is calmly informing you how to survive an atomic explosion, using nothing but posture and optimism. Remember, children, the narrator chirps, if you see a bright flash, duck and cover. The tone is so gentle, so reassuring, that you almost forget you're being instructed on what to do during a nuclear apocalypse. Almost. The turtle demonstrates by pulling himself neatly into his shell. You look at your flimsy wooden desk, complete with gum from 3 separate decades stuck beneath it, and wonder how much protection it really offers. Spoiler, not much. Let's take a moment to appreciate the absurdity. The adults in your life, teachers, administrators, film strip narrators, are all doing their best to keep you calm while preparing you for something they absolutely cannot control. The result? Cheerful catastrophe training, cartoon danger, wholesome existential dread. Your teacher, Miss Waverley, stands at the back of the room with her hands clasped, trying to appear composed. But the way her eyes linger on the windows, those thin panes of glass facing a wide open sky, betrays something else. A quiet worry. A hope that this film strip works, even though she knows deep down the only real safety plan is don't be outside during the Cold War. The film strip continues, its narrator blissfully unaware of irony. If you're at home, he says brightly, simply crouch beside your bed or next to an interior wall. Protect your face. Stay low until the danger has passed. On screen, a cartoon family kneels in their perfectly tidy living room, smiling as if they're practicing for a magazine shoot rather than an atomic impact. You wonder if anyone in the cartoon family ever questions why their furniture looks like it came straight from a catalogue titled One Flash in Your Ash. Miss Waverley pauses the reel to demonstrate proper technique. All right, class, under your desks. You scramble beneath yours, banging your knee, thunking your head, and inhaling chalk dust that could legally qualify as a chemical weapon. The desk wobbles slightly as you settle into the recommended fetal position. Around you, your classmates cough, shuffle, and whisper unhelpful things like, "Do you think our desks are explosion-proof?" and, "My dad says this is pointless." You stay curled up, listening to the sound of your own breathing echo in the small wooden cave you now call home. It's oddly comforting. Your desk may be flimsy, but in the dim light of the classroom it feels like a shield. Symbolic, sure, but something to hide behind while the whole world argues with itself. When the drill ends, Miss Waverley cheerfully announces, "Great job, everyone." Her voice wavers only slightly. You climb back into your seat, brushing off dust and the sudden, overwhelming awareness of your own mortality. The film strip resumes with more cartoons offering reassurance. Your government is prepared. You are safe. Just remember to duck and cover. It's the emotional equivalent of saying everything's fine, while standing knee-deep in rising floodwater. Finally, the lights click back on. Everyone blinks into the brightness like newly hatched chicks. The projector sputters to a stop, releasing a warm puff of burnt film smell, comforting, familiar, and just a little sinister. As class resumes, you stare at your desk with new appreciation. Is it sturdy? No. Is it blast resistant? Absolutely not. But is it yours? Is it where you get to hide, breathe, and pretend everything is manageable? Yes. And sometimes, in the 1950s, that's enough. Sleep gently, and remember to duck, cover, and emotionally compartmentalize like the cartoon turtle taught you. You pass the factory on your way to work, the one that claims to make metal parts. Odd. Considering the workers always look mildly radioactive, you try not to stare at the glowing exit sign. No matter how many times you walk past it, the building always feels off. Too quiet for a place that supposedly manufactures something as noisy as metal. Too clean for a place where sparks should be flying. Too shiny, too sealed, too secret. And the sign above the entrance, Harper Industrial Fabrication, specializing in metal components, reads like something someone invented in 5 minutes just to fill out a form. A soft hum radiates from the walls, a low-frequency vibration that tickles the back of your teeth. The sidewalk beneath your feet feels slightly warm despite the morning chill. The chain-link fence surrounding the property gleams with an unnatural silver sheen, as though it were polished nightly by someone with anxiety and an industrial buffer. You tell yourself it's nothing, because this is the 1950s, and you've learned to accept weirdness like it's flavoured gelatin at a potluck. A group of workers emerges from the side door, their uniforms crisp, their faces expressionless, their hair standing up just a little too straight, as if electricity has opinions about it. They walk in synchronized strides like people who've been trained not to look surprised by anything, including each other. One man gives you a polite nod. His skin has a faint glow under the collar of his shirt. That's probably fine, let's be honest. Factories in the 1950s weren't always producing what their signs claimed. Some were building components for experimental aircraft. Others housed early computer systems the size of your living room. And a few, just a few, were handling materials so classified that even the janitorial staff signed more paperwork than a bride buying a house. You glance back up at the building. Every window has been painted over on the inside with thick black coating. The air vents are angled downward, blowing out a constant stream of faintly warm air that smells like metal, ozone, and ambition. A small red light above the main door blinks slowly, rhythmically, in a way that feels deliberate. You don't know what it means. You don't want to know. Continuing your walk, you try to act natural. You hum a little tune, swing your briefcase slightly, avoid thinking about the rumours. That place is making parts for rockets. No, it's for satellites. No, my cousin said they're making radioactive lunchboxes. No, it's a weather machine factory. Weather. Always the weather. Behind you a siren chirps, a single short note that sounds less like an alarm and more like a reminder. We see you. Have a nice day. A metal panel on the west wall slides open for 2 seconds, emits a soft puff of steam, and closes again. You don't know what that means either. You keep walking. You pass the gravel lot where forklifts move crates stamped with vague labels like Material A and Not for General Use. A guard stands nearby, his sunglasses reflecting the morning sun with military sharpness. He doesn't blink. You assume blinking is optional in his line of work. Walter from accounting catches up to you on the sidewalk. "Morning," he chirps, holding a pastry bag. "Crazy rumour. Somebody said the factory's working with uranium." "Ha! Can you imagine?" You nod slowly. Yes, you can. As Walter happily munches his donut, you notice the factory workers heading back inside. The glowing exit sign pulses once, like a heartbeat. The door closes behind them with a hiss that sounds disturbingly airtight. By the time you reach your office, the hum from the factory has faded into a faint memory. You set down your things, sit at your desk and remind yourself that whatever they're making in that mysterious building has nothing to do with you. Probably. You open your notebook, take a deep breath, and begin your day. Outside, far across the street, the factory hums on, glowing, buzzing, and keeping its secrets sealed tighter than a Cold War vault. Sweet dreams tonight, and try not to think too hard about what's in Material A. You're lying in your backyard hammock when jets scream overhead chasing something silver. Officially, UFOs don't exist. unofficially welcome to classified airspace. The jets roar so low you swear you can feel your DNA rearranging itself as you clutch the edges of your hammock like it's a carnival ride you didn't sign up for. The sky, moments ago a peaceful shade of summer blue, now vibrates with military enthusiasm. The silver object streaking ahead of the jets moves with unsettling grace, turning sideways, diving, climbing, performing aerial ballet that absolutely violates several laws of physics and one city noise ordinance. You shield your eyes from the sun, trying to focus on the blur. It's shiny, it's fast, it's definitely not weather. But sometime soon, someone in a crisp uniform will solemnly assure the public that yes, actually it was weather. Possibly a balloon, possibly a reflection, possibly Venus wearing reflective shorts. Let's talk about what you're witnessing. Because the 1950s government wasn't just interested in UFOs, it was actively chasing them, categorizing them, and occasionally panicking about them. Programs like Project Sign, Project Grudge, and the iconic Project Blue Book investigated thousands of sightings. Officially, these studies were meant to reassure the public. Unofficially, they were the bureaucratic equivalent of asking, "What on earth is that?" You watch the silver object tilt sharply, an impossible angle, and shoot upwards so quickly it leaves the jets looking like confused pigeons. The pilots attempt to follow, engines howling in protest. Somewhere nearby, a car alarm goes off, even though car alarms won't be invented for decades. The sheer futuristic energy of the moment demands it. You sit up slowly in your hammock, letting it sway beneath you like a gentle cradle of denial. A soft breeze carries the faint scent of freshly cut grass, charcoal from a neighbour's grill, and the unmistakable tang of government anxiety. Your next-door neighbour, Mr. Harold, steps outside clutching his newspaper. He squints at the sky. "Weather balloon?" he suggests, voice trembling with the false confidence of a man repeating what he's been told to repeat. You shrug, because you've learned that shrugging is an excellent survival strategy in the 1950s. The jets loop back toward the object, which now hovers silently, taunting them. No sound, no exhaust, no visible means of propulsion. It's as though it's being piloted by someone or something who thinks gravity is adorable. Then, without warning, it zips across the horizon like a coin flicked by an impatient god. Gone. Just like that. The jets continue for a moment, overshooting the chase in a tragically human way, before circling back in, defeated formation. You lie back again, letting the hammock sway gently as adrenaline melts into confusion. The sky looks normal now, innocent even, as if the universe just hit a reset button labelled "Pretend Nothing Happened." A siren wails in the distance, police or fire, or possibly men in black sedans who specialise in arriving quickly and refusing to explain things. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the sun lull you back toward relaxation. But your mind is buzzing now, filling with questions. What exactly were they chasing? Why did it move like that? And why does the military always insist everything is perfectly ordinary when all evidence points to the contrary? You sit up again, just in time to see two unmarked cars cruising slowly down your street. Men in suits step out, scanning the sky with clipboards. They knock on Mr. Harold's door. You watch him point nervously toward his backyard, gesturing wildly. They jot notes, they nod politely, they leave, just as quickly. As the chaos settles, a strange calm washes over you, because now you know something deep, comforting, and mildly alarming. You don't just live in classified airspace, you nap in it. You close your eyes again, letting the hammock cradle you. The jets are gone, the silver object is gone, the sky is quiet. But you know better. This is the 1950s, and the truth is always flying just a little faster than the people chasing it. Sleep softly and keep one eye on the sky. You duck into a dimly lit bar and notice the wallpaper has holes in it. Men behind mirrors take notes while people are secretly drugged for research. You sip your drink more carefully. The room is dark enough that everything appears dipped in sepia. The bar stools, the brass fixtures, even the bartender polishing glasses with a rag that looks older than the concept of ethics. Smoke curls lazily through the air in elegant ribbons, catching the glow of the neon sign outside the window. The atmosphere feels intentionally foggy, as though someone said, "Let's make this place look mysterious," and then turn that dial way past reasonable. A jukebox plays quietly in the corner, crooning something romantic and slightly off-key. It's the kind of music that makes you feel both nostalgic and vaguely watched, and that's appropriate because you are being watched, closely, enthusiastically, possibly with government funding. You take a seat at the bar, choosing the stool that looks least sticky. A bartender with slicked back hair and a suspiciously tight smile slides a drink toward you without asking what you ordered. "On the house," he says. You stare at the glass like it might lunge at you. After all, in the 1950s, free drinks in certain establishments often came with a side of psychedelic enlightenment. Let's talk about where you've wandered into. Operation Midnight Climax was a real CIA project, where undercover agents used safe houses disguised as brothels and bars to test the effects of LSD on unsuspecting people. Hidden behind one-way mirrors, agents took notes while civilians experienced surprise chemical vacations they never signed up for. It was science, yes, but the kind of science you do when you've lost the plot and can no longer distinguish between research and recreational chaos. You scan the room casually. A woman in a red dress lounges at a table, twirling a cherry by the stem. Her eyes flick toward the mirror, too knowingly. A man in a fedora nervously stirs his drink, unaware that two agents behind that mirror are debating whether his facial expression indicates enlightenment or gastrointestinal distress. The wallpaper to your right has an obvious hole poked straight through the floral pattern. Whoever installed it was not hired for subtlety. You raise your glass, sniffing it gently. It smells normal enough, whiskey with a hint of oak and desperation. You take a cautious sip. The flavour is warm, smooth, deeply comforting. For now. The bartender watches you with the polite interest of someone whose performance review depends on how quickly you start seeing colours that don't exist. A soft giggle escapes from the hallway behind you. You turn to look, but the source has already vanished. Every sound in here feels like a clue, every glance like a test. Even the jukebox seems to hum with conspiratorial energy, as if it knows exactly what is going on and cannot legally discuss it. Suddenly, a man at the end of the bar stands up abruptly, his chair scraping the floor in a dramatic flourish. He blinks rapidly, sways slightly and mutters, "The walls are breathing." The bartender sighs, unfazed. "Third one tonight," he murmurs. You nurse your drink slowly, taking tiny sips like someone negotiating with fate. Your tongue tingles. Your thoughts feel a bit sparkly. Not alarming, just sparkly enough to make you double-check whether the ceiling fan has always had that many blades. Behind the mirror, pens scribble eagerly, clipboards shuffle. Someone whispers, "Subject maintaining motor control." Someone else whispers, "What was in that drink again?" A slap. A quiet shh. You turn back to your glass with a mix of resignation and mild amusement. Welcome to Cold War nightlife, where espionage meets experimental pharmacology, and everyone leaves with a story they can never tell. As the bar's lights dim further, the room seems to soften around the edges. Conversations blend into a gentle hum. Your body relaxes against the bar, heavy and warm, like you're sinking into a velvet-lined conspiracy. Eventually, you set your empty glass down and stand slowly. The floor tilts, not in a dangerous way, just in a "the world is a suggestion" way. You make your way to the exit, giving the mirror a knowing nod. Outside, the cool night air feels crisp, refreshing, honest. A rare sensation around here. You walk home under blinking streetlights, your mind drifting between suspicion and serenity. Whatever was in that, drink you survived it. And in the 1950s, that makes it a successful night out. Sleep softly, and maybe avoid bars with wallpaper holes tomorrow. A cheerful salesman knocks on your door holding pamphlets about stylish underground bunker decor. Nothing boosts home value like prepping for nuclear sunrise. He beams at you with the blinding optimism of a man who has personally decided that existential dread should be monetized. His suit is crisp, his tie patterned with tiny stars and stripes, and his hair sculpted into a shape that defies both gravity and the general anxiety of the times. The pamphlet he hands you is thick, too thick, and titled something like Modern Survival, Comfort, Class, and Radiological Protection. It features a smiling family enjoying tea under 6 feet of reinforced concrete. You invite him in, mostly because you don't know how to politely decline a man wearing that much enthusiasm. He steps across your threshold with the confidence of someone who believes every home should have a subterranean spa meets bunker. His briefcase snaps open with a practiced flourish, revealing colour swatches, diagrams, and a tiny plastic model of a fallout shelter complete with miniature furniture. "Picture this," he says, sliding the model toward you. A cosy underground haven, vinyl flooring, adjustable shelving, built-in canned goods display, all the comforts of home, just, below it. You nod because nodding has become your primary communication strategy in the 1950s. Your eyes drift to the diagrams, cross-sections of backyards carved open like layer cakes, little arrows pointing to air filters, radiation meters, and something suspiciously labelled Optional Entertainment Alcove. There is not a single mention of the possibility that you may never need this bunker, because in the 1950s, optimism is a luxury and preparation is a hobby. The salesman picks up a brochure and gestures you closer. Inside, families smile, brightly while sitting in beautifully decorated shelters, playing board games like nothing catastrophic is happening above them. Every room has curtains. Why a bunker needs drapery is unclear, but the aesthetic is undeniably charming. "See," he says, "fallout doesn't mean you can't have flair." He hands you a fabric swatch labelled Atomic Beige. You've never considered the colour scheme of an underground survival chamber, but suddenly it feels urgent. The salesman continues talking, words flowing like a waterfall of rehearsed reassurance. Steel reinforcement, up to military standard, easy access hatch, enough space for 4 people, or 5 if you're all on good terms. Outside, a distant siren wails, an ordinary sound these days. The salesman doesn't even blink. "That's exactly why you need this," he adds, his voice softening into concern. "For moments like that, you walk with him to your backyard." He points at the lawn, which is currently home to 2 garden gnomes and a patch of dandelions, and explains how a shelter would fit perfectly right there. You imagine yourself watering petunias sitting directly above a blast-proof vault. It's strangely comforting and deeply unsettling. He taps the ground with his shoe. "Good soil," he says, "ideal for digging." You resist the urge to say, "Ideal for what exactly?" Avoiding vaporization. But you bite your tongue. After all, he's very polite. The breeze shifts, carrying the faint scent of someone grilling nearby. A perfectly normal evening. And yet here you are, contemplating whether matching bunk beds are necessary in a doomsday scenario. The salesman senses your hesitation and leans in with a conspiratorial whisper. Everyone important is building one. Senators, scientists, your neighbours. You glance over the fence. Mrs. Henderson waves suspiciously quickly before darting back inside. He hands you a final pamphlet, one with glossy pages and phrases like "peace of mind for the modern family and survive with style." Inside, a woman wearing pearls organises canned peaches in a lead-lined pantry, as if it's the highlight of her week. You thank him for his time, accepting the mountain of brochures like a gift basket of anxiety. He tips his hat and strolls down the street, already knocking on the next door with cheerful urgency. You stand in your quiet living room, pamphlets fanned across your coffee table like tarot cards predicting a concrete future. You sigh, you breathe, you sit. This is the 1950s. Your home may not have central air, your phone may be party line shared, but you might, if you sign the dotted line, have a fully furnished bunker. Sleep softly tonight, above ground while it lasts. You have a cold. The doctor prescribes a new experimental pill. In the 1950s, that could mean anything from antibiotics to mild radiological adventures. Good luck reading the fine print. You sit on the crinkly paper of the examination table, clutching a handkerchief, embroidered with daisies. Your nose is red, your eyes are watery, and the room smells faintly of antiseptic and whatever cologne the doctor applies with life-changing enthusiasm. The doctor flips through your chart with the confidence of someone who believes deeply in two things: the power of modern medicine and the limitless potential of unregulated pharmaceutical trials. He turns toward you with a grin that is far too excited for someone diagnosing a minor cold. "Good news," he announces. "We're trying something new today." He reaches into a drawer and pulls out a small amber bottle. The pills inside rattle ominously, like tiny maracas filled with possibilities you didn't ask for. You inspect the label. It simply says, "Test compound 47A." No dosage instructions. No warnings, no comforting list of ingredients, just the name of something that feels like it should be handled with tongs. The doctor pats your shoulder far too gently for someone handing you an unidentified capsule. This one, he says, is cutting edge. We're part of a nationwide trial. Very exciting. Your cold is not exciting. Your sinuses are not exciting. But apparently your mucus is now contributing to national progress. Let's talk about medicine in the 1950s. This was a decade of optimism, innovation, and astonishingly relaxed testing standards. Experimental pills were prescribed like breath mints. Some contained early antibiotics. Some contained stimulants. Some contained tranquilizers strong enough to sedate an elephant. And some, well, the government would rather you didn't think too hard about those. You swallow the pill with a cup of water, mostly because refusing would require more confrontation than your congested brain can handle. It tastes vaguely metallic, like licking a nickel that's been sitting in the sun. As you leave the office, the doctor waves cheerfully. Let me know if you experience any unusual side effects, or don't. Either way, we'll learn something. You're not reassured. Walking home, you start monitoring yourself like a human barometer. Sensations come and go. Your fingers feel warm, your ears feel cold. You sneeze once and swear it echoes longer than expected. You chalk it up to imagination, or hope, or denial. By the time you reach your living room, the pill is doing something. You're not sure what. Your cold is still present, but your sense of time feels a little stretchy, like someone adjusted the clock to soft focus. The wallpaper patterns appear slightly more enthusiastic than usual. You sit down, breathing steadily, waiting for your body to file a status report. Your cat jumps onto your lap, looks deeply into your eyes, and recoils slightly, as if you are radiating new and confusing energies. You try to pet him. He darts away. He never darts away. Troubling. You reach for the informational pamphlet the doctor gave you. It's a single sheet, printed hastily with phrases like promising early results. Do not take with grapefruit juice. Actually, we don't know about the grapefruit juice, but avoid it just in case. Call your doctor if you notice dizziness, euphoria, or minor glowing. Glowing? You reread that line. It absolutely says glowing. A mild panic rises, but you remind yourself, this is the 1950s. Everyone is always mildly glowing from something. The pill is just joining the party. As the evening settles in, your symptoms evolve. Your cold is still there, but so is a curious sensation, like your brain is taking a slow, luxurious bath in warm carbonated water. It's relaxing, concerning, but relaxing. You curl up on the sofa with a blanket, letting the room gently wobble around the edges. Eventually your body calms, your breath steadies. Your cold begins to loosen, clearing slightly, as though the experimental pill has decided, for today at least, to be helpful. You drift towards sleep, hoping tomorrow brings clarity, or at least consistency. In the 1950s, that's what counts as good medicine. You wave at the friendly pilot, releasing a fine mist over the water. He waves back. You cough. The government later assures you the test was completely routine. The plane drifts low across the harbour, humming like a satisfied refrigerator. Its wings skim so close to the water that you half expect it to scoop up a fish or two as souvenirs. The mist trailing behind it sparkles softly in the sunlight, beautiful, glimmering, and absolutely suspicious. It settles over the bay in a delicate blanket, drifting towards shore with the lazy determination of fog that has somewhere very important to be. You pull your sweater a little closer around your shoulders, partly to brace against the breeze and partly because your throat suddenly feels tingly. Just a little. Like a carbonated bubble trying to introduce itself. You clear your throat. The pilot wiggles his wings in greeting as if to say, "Enjoy the mist! It's government issued, let's talk!" About low-flying aircraft in the 1950s. A decade of experimentation, innovation, and questionable decisions conducted at altitudes that absolutely violated safety recommendations. The government loved a good aerial dispersal test, usually involving planes releasing harmless substances over large populations. Harmless, of course, being defined by people who never actually stood beneath the mist themselves. You stand at the end of the pier watching the plane circle back. It makes a wide arc, then swoops lower, releasing another shimmering veil. A fisherman nearby adjusts his hat and mutters, "Not again," with the weary resignation of a man who survived too many secret programs for one lifetime. He reels in his line and inspects the fish he's caught as if checking whether it has grown extra fins. The mist rolls in thicker now, drifting between boats, clinging to ropes, settling onto wooden docks with soft, damp fingers. It has a faint scent, not unpleasant, just peculiar. A clean, powdery hint that reminds you of hospital corridors and freshly unboxed appliances. You take another breath and cough again. Not a dramatic cough, just a small, polite ahem that makes you question your life choices. On shore, people go about their day with practiced indifference. A group of teenagers skip stones across the water, laughing as if this is just another Saturday. A couple walks hand in hand along the promenade, pointing at seagulls and ignoring the part where the air looks like it's been coated in pearl dust. A postal worker unloads mailbags from a truck, humming a tune and absolutely refusing to look up. Because this is the 1950s, and looking up is how you get drafted into bureaucratic panic. The plane passes overhead again, closer this time. You can see the pilot clearly. Goggles, leather jacket, a grin wide enough to qualify as suspicious enthusiasm. He salutes you. You salute back because refusing feels illegal. As the mist thickens, the bay takes on a dreamlike quality. The boats look softer, the rippling water glows faintly, and the sunlight diffuses through the haze in warm halos. It would be romantic if it weren't potentially part of a field experiment. You sit on a bench and watch as the world turns into a watercolour painting of classified activity. Eventually the plane finishes its rounds and climbs back toward the clouds. leaving behind silence and a faint shimmering layer over everything. People begin to comment now that the danger of eye contact has passed. Must have been pest control, someone says. Fog enhancement trial, another suggests, as though that's a perfectly normal thing. Probably weather research, a third offers, a favourite Cold War explanation that never explains anything. Later that evening, the radio delivers a brief announcement. Residents may have noticed aircraft activity today. The exercise was routine. There is no cause for concern, which in Cold War language translates to "we did something. Please do not ask us about it." You step outside again before bed. The harbour glows softly under the moonlight. The mist still lingers, thin as lace, drifting in and out of the shadows. The air is cool, calm, not threatening, just quietly unusual. You breathe slowly, letting the night settle around you. You're okay. Or at least, you're 1950s okay. And in this decade, that's more than enough. Sleep softly, and maybe avoid waving at planes tomorrow. You clock in at your new job. The lab has no windows. The boss refuses to tell you what's in the tanks. And the security clearance process involves 3 signatures and a blood oath. The moment the heavy metal door seals shut behind you, the outside world disappears literally and emotionally. Fluorescent lights hum overhead in that uniquely 1950s frequency that might double as a lie detector. The air tastes faintly of bleach and ambition. You tighten your lab coat, which feels less like protective equipment and more like a symbolic gesture, like placing a napkin on your lap before eating a radioactive sandwich. Your boss, Mr. Langley, materializes beside you with the stealth of a man whose entire life is governed by NDAs. He hands you a clipboard and says, "Follow protocol," in a tone that suggests protocol will be both your salvation and your undoing. You glance at the clipboard. The first page is entirely redacted. The second page instructs you not to panic. The third page suggests you are supposed to memorize the first 2 pages before they were redacted. You nod anyway. Nodding is safe. Nodding is your new best friend. Let's talk about this lab. Corporate research in the 1950s wasn't just about toothpaste formulas and new flavors of gelatin. Many companies quietly partnered with government agencies to develop materials, chemicals, and experimental substances whose descriptions still sound like science fiction. Anything that bubbled, glowed, reacted, oscillated, or whispered faintly when agitated ended up in a tank like the ones in front of you. The tanks stretch across the room in tidy rows, massive steel cylinders labelled with vague identifiers like Substance B, Alloy X, and Do Not Tap. You linger beside one tank in particular. It emits a faint gurgle that sounds suspiciously like it's trying to get your attention. You step back. You're not here to make friends. Mr. Langley leads you through orientation. This hallway leads to the break room, he says, pointing to a corridor filled with flickering lights. This hallway leads to the testing chamber, he adds, pointing to a corridor where the lights do not flicker because the lights are afraid to. And this hallway, he says, lowering his voice, is off limits unless you have level 4 clearance. You look. There is no hallway there. Just a blank wall. You decide not to ask questions. You enter the testing room where several scientists huddle over instruments that resemble early musical instruments welded to industrial mixers. Gauges twitch. Dials tremble. A machine the size of a refrigerator emits a consistent whine, as though it's pleading for union representation. Your first assignment. Monitor Tank 7 for behavioural changes. Behavioural changes, a phrase normally reserved for living things. You approach Tank 7 slowly. A faint glow pulses from within, soft and rhythmic, like a nightlight with performance anxiety. You check the gauge. Pressure, normal. Temperature, normal. Radiation, higher than you'd prefer, lower than something that would warrant an evacuation. Good enough. You scribble tank calm today on your clipboard because your vocabulary has narrowed to calm and not calm, and this seems the correct moment for optimism. Around lunchtime, alarms suddenly shriek. Lights flash red. Someone yells, "Containment breach!" You freeze. A colleague calmly sips his coffee and says, "Don't worry, it's always a false alarm on Wednesdays." You appreciate his composure, but also notice his coffee cup is vibrating. Mr. Langley materializes again. "Good news," he announces. It was a false alarm. This time. He adjusts his tie, which is patterned with tiny atoms, then adds, "Please sign this form confirming you did not witness anything unusual." He hands you a pen. The form has 16 signature lines. You sign them all. By the end of your shift, you're exhausted, disoriented, mildly glowing. You hang your lab coat on a hook beside others that look scorched in places. As you walk toward the exit, you notice a new poster on the wall. Remember, curiosity is not part of your job. It features a cartoon scientist smiling as his lab catches fire behind him. The heavy door unseals with a hiss. Fresh air hits your face. Trees, sunlight, birds, all the things missing from your workplace and from your job description. You take a deep, steadying breath. You survived another day. And in the 1950s, surviving, corporate science is a resume skill. Sleep softly and try not to dream about Tank 7. You pick up the receiver and the line crackles like someone is already listening. The 1950s loved tapping phones almost as much as they loved diners. The sound travels through the handset like static wrapped in curiosity. A soft click, a faint hum, and the subtle impression that someone, somewhere, has leaned in a little too close to your private conversation. You clear your throat. The line responds by crackling again, as if clearing its throat right back at you. Polite, unsettling, and deeply on brand for the decade. You say hello. The phone says nothing. Someone else, however, says everything by saying absolutely nothing at all. You hang up, take a breath, and pick up the receiver again. Click, hum, another click. Ah, yes, the musical soundtrack of Cold War communication. Let's talk about why your phone line has developed personality. In the 1950s, surveillance was less covert high-tech equipment, and more someone literally plugged a second cord into your copper wire and hoped you wouldn't notice. Wiretapping was widespread. Legal oversight was minimal, and the average American household phone was basically a party line for the government, your neighbors, and anyone with a screwdriver and poor boundaries. You place the receiver back down and stare at the phone, its rotary dial shining innocently, pretending it isn't connected to a tangle of wires leading right to someone wearing headphones in a small windowless room. Your cat strolls by, rubbing against the cord with suspicion. Even he knows something is up. The next morning you test a theory. You lift the receiver slowly, gently, like you're trying not to wake a sleeping bear. The line clicks 4 times. 4 times. You've acquired a full audience. At this rate, your phone line may qualify for community theatre funding. You say good morning in your most diplomatic tone. The line hisses back in what you can only interpret as bureaucratic acknowledgement. At breakfast, you tell your spouse your suspicions that the phone might be tapped. They respond with, "Of course it is. So is everyone else's." Then they pass you the toast. Fear and carbs make an excellent pairing. On your lunch break, you phone your friend Martha. "Well, hello, click." Click. Martha pauses. "Who's that?" "Oh," you say casually, "just the government." She sighs. "Again?" The two of you talk anyway because defying inconvenience is the American spirit. You swap recipes, complain about the laundry, and meticulously avoid discussing anything remotely interesting, just in case your audience is taking notes. Halfway through your conversation, you hear whispering. Actual whispering. As though someone forgot to mute themselves during your call. You and Martha exchange a long silence. Finally she says, "Should we say hi?" You shrug, even though she can't see it. Maybe later. That night the phone rings at 3 a.m., the sacred hour of ghosts, guilt, and government officials working overtime. You stumble toward it, rubbing sleep from your eyes. Hello? Silence. Then click. Another click. A breath? Or just static? It's impossible to tell. The line hums with electricity, warm and alive. It feels like someone on the other end is waiting for you to slip up and say something outrageous, like I'm considering a different brand of dish soap. In the 1950s, product disloyalty might actually be enough to get you flagged. You hang up gently, almost apologetically, and crawl back into bed. The room is quiet again, but your mind isn't. You lie awake wondering, who is listening? A bored operator? A serious agent? A man eating a donut, lost in your grocery list? Does he judge your grocery list? By sunrise, the only thing you're certain of is this. Your telephone line has better attendance at your conversations than some of your relatives. You take one last look at the receiver before starting your day. It sits there, still, innocent, humming faintly. Your uninvited roommate. This is the 1950s. Privacy is optional. Phone surveillance is complimentary. Sleep softly, and if the phone clicks tonight, just assume it's saying goodnight back. Your suburb looks normal until you realise all the houses were part of a government test on suburban behaviour. Even your mailbox might be gathering data. At first glance, your neighbourhood is the picture of 1950s perfection. Rows of pastel houses with matching shutters, matching fences, matching lawns, matching exhaustion levels. Every driveway holds the same model of car. Every porch boasts the same rocking chair. Even the dogs look suspiciously similar, as if the breeder received a government-issued template. You step outside for your morning paper and pause at the end of the driveway, taking in the uncanny uniformity. The houses stretch across the horizon, like someone copy-pasted a single blueprint and called it urban planning. You've always suspected something was off, but today the air hums with a gentle strangeness, as though the entire town is waiting for you to notice it's more of an experiment than a home. Your mailbox creaks when you open it, not unusual, but then you hear a tiny click from inside. You peer closer. Was that metal shifting or recording? You remind yourself that paranoia is unhealthy, before remembering that in the 1950s, paranoia is practically patriotic. Let's talk about where you actually live. In the mid-century boom, the US government conducted various studies on suburban development, traffic flow, community interaction, shopping habits, gender roles, conformity. New neighbourhoods were often testbeds for ideas, controlled environments for social science cloaked in white picket fences. Some were harmless, some were secret, and some collected more data than the residents ever realised. You walk down the sidewalk waving at Mr. Thompson, who is trimming his hedges with mechanical precision. He has been trimming those same hedges for 17 minutes. You know because you've been quietly counting. His smile never wavers. His hedge length never varies. He looks like a man determined to meet a quota he never agreed to. Mrs. Dalton walks outside next, watering her flowers with the exact same watering can you saw in the window of Mrs. Lewis's house yesterday, and in the Jenkins house the day before. A chill tiptoes down your spine. The neighbourhood doesn't just look coordinated, it feels organised, monitored, curated. The houses themselves seem to observe you. The symmetry is too perfect, the angles too sharp, the paint too evenly applied. You squint at your neighbour's roof. Are those shingles numbered? A car rolls slowly down the street, driven by a man in a suit who definitely doesn't live here. He glances at each house with the practiced calm of someone checking inventory. When he reaches your house, he marks something on a clipboard. You wave. He doesn't wave back. You continue your walk, passing the cul-de-sac that looks exactly like the other cul-de-sac, and the park bench that appears identical to the bench 3 blocks away. Children play hopscotch with synchronized enthusiasm. 2 mothers push strollers in perfect unison, their strides matching like a choreographed experiment in parental behavior. Then there's the new house at the end of the street. It wasn't there last week, or was it? Hard to say. Its design blends so seamlessly with the others that it might have existed all along, or might have been lowered into place at 3 a.m. by men in matching suits. As you turn the corner, you overhear 2 neighbours chatting. Did your husband get the survey? Yes. And the follow-up survey? And the post-survey survey? Oh, of course. You pretend not to notice the jitter in your stomach. Back at your house, you opened your front door and step inside. Everything looks the same as always, your sofa, your lamp, your framed photo of cousin Helen. But now you're noticing things differently. The radio on the counter hums even when off. The thermostat clicks when you walk past it. The living room window feels like it's angled toward the street a little too strategically. You sit down, exhale, and let the truth settle softly over you. Your entire suburban dream might be a meticulously crafted Cold War petri dish. But it's tidy, it's quiet, the lawns are immaculate, and honestly, you've lived here long enough to get used to being observed. Sleep softly tonight. Your house was designed to make sure you do. At the end of a long day, you lie down, close your eyes, and think, was any of this real? The answer, in the 1950s, is almost always yes, just classified. Your ceiling glows faintly in the streetlight's reflection, casting long, soft shadows that stretch across your bedroom like quiet spectators. The room is peaceful, still, comforting even, but your mind is sprinting through the day's events like a frazzled Cold War archivist trying to file paperwork before the morning briefing. You replay it all, the mysterious fog rolling off the bay, the man in a suit smiling too knowingly at your mailbox, the low-flying aircraft that definitely wasn't delivering mail. The phone clicks, the identical houses, the pigeons with suspicious career aspirations. Somewhere in the chaos of the week, between the government mistings and classified suburbia, you started suspecting something truly absurd. Something you didn't want to say out loud. Something you hoped wasn't true. But now, lying here in the soft darkness of your bedroom, you finally let the idea surface. What if the experiment is you? You inhale slowly. The air feels normal. Too normal. You open one eye and scan the room, your dresser, your lamp, your curtains billowing gently with the night breeze. Everything appears ordinary, yet everything also appears like it could be quietly logging your behavioural responses for a quarterly report. The 1950s were special that way. You never knew if your day was simply your day, or if it was part of a data set destined for a file marked confidential. Do not discuss around civilians. Let's review. Earlier, the salesman tried to convince you to buy a fallout shelter with mood lighting. Then a stranger measured your driveway but refused to make eye contact. Your doctor prescribed a pill with side effects including mild glowing. Your dentist whispered tingling sensation like he was summoning spirits, and your telephone line crackles like someone crocheting static on the other end. You're starting to identify a pattern. You, always conveniently present when the strange thing happens. You turn onto your side, pulling the blanket up to your chin in a defensive gesture because cotton is historically known to ward off government study, or at least make you feel better about it. The mattress creaks gently, reminding you that even furniture had questionable manufacturing standards during this decade. A car passes outside, its headlights sliding across your wall. You freeze for a moment, listening. Was that normal? Or was that someone doing a slow drive-by to see if you've exhibited any unusual cognitive development since breakfast? Impossible to know. The soft tick-tick of your bedside clock anchors you back into the moment. You breathe deeply again, slower this time, calmer. Because at the end of the day, even if you are part of an experiment, you're doing an admirable job of participating. You've shown resilience, curiosity, and only one episode of mild panic, which in the 1950s probably puts you in the 99th percentile of stability. Your eyelids grow heavy. Your thoughts soften around the edges. You let the day dissolve behind you like sugar in warm tea. You think, just for a moment, about what tomorrow might bring. Another glowing boat, a classified film strip, a mysteriously enthusiastic government visitor, or maybe, if you're lucky, a completely ordinary day that doesn't require questioning your entire reality. But probably not. This is the 1950s. Ordinary days are mostly theoretical. As you drift slowly into sleep, your mind settles into one peaceful truth. Even if you are part of the experiment, you're doing great. You're calm. You're steady. You're wonderfully compliant without even trying. The room grows quieter, softer, still. And if there is someone behind the metaphorical glass watching you drift off, well, at least you're giving them a very soothing show. You pour yourself a bright, wholesome glass of 1950s milk, the kind advertised by smiling spokespeople with impossibly perfect hair. But something tastes extra. In the 1950s, food fortification trials occasionally drifted into we put something weird in the dairy supply to see what happens. You take another sip anyway because it's the 50s, and questioning your milk is un-American. The milk glides across your tongue with a richness that feels suspiciously enthusiastic. It's not bad exactly, just unusually confident, almost proud of itself. Like the milk knows something you don't. You lower the glass slowly, staring into its creamy depths, half expecting it to wink at you. Outside, birds chirp cheerfully. A car hums down the street. Your neighbour waves from his lawn, blissfully unaware that your breakfast beverage might be doubling as a scientific study. You wave back with the patriotic vigour of someone pretending everything is completely normal. You take another cautious sip, still creamy, still cold, still carrying the faintest aftertaste of possible unintended consequences. Let's talk about milk in the 1950s. This was the era of fortification, a well-meaning movement to enrich everyday foods with vitamins, minerals, and occasionally substances no one could confidently pronounce. In theory, it was supposed to make the nation healthier. In practice, sometimes the wrong batch got enriched, or too much of something got added, or scientists got curious and said, "What if we tried this?" Without considering that milk has feelings too. You set the glass down and examine the bottle. The label looks normal, cheerful cows, modest typography, a promise of purity and strength. But now that you're paying attention, you notice a tiny stamp on the bottom. Batch 14C. It feels ominous. No milk should have a batch number that sounds like it belongs in a secret warehouse. Your cat wanders over, sniffs your milk, and immediately backs away with the slow, deliberate caution of someone filing a safety report. You ignore him and take another sip because this is the 1950s, and milk is supposed to be good for you, even milk that tastes like it. Paid tuition at a private school. A soft warmth blooms in your chest. That's new. You sit down at the kitchen table, feeling the faintest hum beneath your skin, like your molecules are stretching after a long nap. You tap your fingers. They feel unusually coordinated. What was in this milk? Calcium, vitamin D, ambition. You recall hearing rumours at the grocery store. Mrs. Henderson mentioned a trial run of enhanced dairy products. Mr. Collins insisted the government was boosting national vitality through breakfast. Someone else muttered that a nearby research lab was studying nutrient absorption. All vague, all concerning, all very 1950s. You take another sip, partly out of curiosity, partly because the milk is starting to feel like a relationship you can't walk away from. The taste intensifies, still good, but with an undercurrent of metallic brightness. You close one eye, then the other, checking if the room looks different. It does, but maybe that's because you're starting to feel sharper, more focused, almost inspired. You stand up, you sit down again. Standing felt too powerful. You breathe deeply, waiting to see if your body files an official complaint. Instead, you feel surprisingly calm. Your skin tingles faintly, like you're becoming slightly more aerodynamic. You look at the glass. The milk looks back at you. Across the street, your neighbour takes a sip of his own milk and immediately begins sweeping his porch with unprecedented enthusiasm. His movements are crisp, his posture is perfect, his eyebrows look determined. You suspect he's drinking from the same batch. You return to your glass. You consider your choices, and because you are a product of Cold War optimism and the relentless cheerfulness of mid-century advertising, you finish the milk. As the last drop slides down your throat, you exhale softly. Your cold is gone. Your sinuses feel clear. Your vision sharpens just enough for you to question reality. Maybe this milk worked. Maybe it did something. Maybe you'll grow an extra moral compass. But one thing is certain. In the 1950s, even breakfast had classified potential. Sleep softly and maybe choose water tomorrow. You step outside for a peaceful evening stroll, only to feel the ground rumble like the universe just shifted its weight. A distant flash lights up the horizon. The government later assures you this was a scheduled test, which is interesting, because you definitely were not scheduled to be anywhere near it. Welcome to the age of surprise explosions. The twilight sky had been soft and quiet just minutes before, painted in gentle purples and fading peaches. You'd been ready for a calm walk, maybe breathe the crisp air, admire your neighbour's rose bushes, contemplate buying better shoes. But instead, the earth just attempted to vibrate you into the afterlife. You freeze mid-step, one foot hovering above the sidewalk like you've forgotten how gravity works. The rumble fades, leaving behind the unsettling stillness that only follows events of questionable legality. Birds erupt from the trees in frantic spirals, screeching like nature itself is filing a noise complaint. Your heart thumps a few extra times, unsure which agency it should report this incident to. You look toward the horizon, where a faint glow lingers, too bright to be a sunset, too vertical to be lightning, too dramatic to be anything you want near your property line. A warm breeze drifts past, carrying the faint scent of smoke, mixed with the gentle aroma of something that absolutely should not be airborne. Let's talk about missile tests in the 1950s. This decade adored them. Couldn't get enough. The government launched missiles the way other people launched backyard barbecues, frequently, loudly, and with minimal concern for neighbours. Many were classified, which is code for "we're not telling you what we did, but please ignore the crater." If you felt a sudden shockwave, weather. If you saw a strange flash, weather. If your windows rattled, tremendous weather. Back on your street, porch lights flick on one by one, each homeowner stepping outside with the same expression. Part curiosity, part denial, part "I should have updated my will." Mr. Thompson, who prides himself on always knowing what's going on, stands frozen with a hose in his hand. His lawn is now half watered, half traumatized. Probably a training exercise, he says, voice quivering. For what, you ask? He doesn't answer. He just stares into the distance like a man reenacting a war movie trailer. Another neighbour jogs by, clutching her dog, who is shaking as though auditioning for a role in a disaster film. "Do you think we should go inside?" she asks. You shrug. Inside, outside, upside down, It's unclear which direction is safe when the horizon is glowing like the world's worst birthday candle. A second rumble rolls across the ground, softer this time, like an aftershock. Politely knocking, your knees wobble. A car alarm several blocks away begins wailing, offended by the situation. The sky flickers again, brief, bright, and absolutely none of your business, according to officials who will explain this away tomorrow with the confidence of mediocre actors in a government-sponsored play. You continue your walk because the 1950s have trained you to accept unusual phenomena as routine. The crickets resume chirping, the air cools, the scent of ozone lingers like a reminder that the atmosphere has definitely been slapped around. You pass a lamppost that flickers nervously, unsure if it can handle the emotional burden of tonight. The pavement beneath your feet still holds a faint warmth, like the earth is trying to whisper, "You didn't imagine that." By the time you return home, the glow has faded, the dog stopped barking, and the street looks ordinary again, eerily, deceptively ordinary. You switch on the radio hoping for news, but the announcer only mentions mild weather disturbances and asks listeners to avoid jumping to conclusions. You turn the radio off, you know what you felt. The ground doesn't rumble like it's waking up from a nap unless something very large and very fast does something very wrong. Still, you get ready for bed, climbing under the covers as the night settles back into its quiet routine. The shadows look normal again, your home feels steady again, and yes, somewhere far away, a classified report is being typed. Test successful. Civilian panic minimal. Sleep softly tonight, and if the ground shakes again, just assume it's scheduled. You check into a pristine, mint-green tiled hospital corridor for a routine scan. Doctors move briskly, papers shuffle, and no one makes eye contact. Back in the 1950s, certain hospital wings doubled as quiet testing grounds for new technologies. Some harmless, some experimentally enthusiastic. You lie back and try not to think about the machine, humming like it's learning your secrets. The hospital smells like antiseptic and secrets, clean in the way only places that hide things must be. The polished linoleum reflects the overhead lights in long ghostly streaks, stretching the hall so far it feels like you're walking into a textbook illustration labelled Cold War Healthcare, an exhibit. A nurse glides past, her shoes silent, her expression unreadable. She doesn't look at you, but she does mutter something about calibration, which is not a word you want overheard in a medical context. You're guided into a small room with one machine dominating the space. It stands tall, metal, humming faintly like it has opinions about your medical history. Buttons blink, dials twitch. A coil wrapped around its base gives you the unsettling impression that someone took apart a radio, a vacuum cleaner, and a lawnmower, and then said, "Yes, this is perfect for diagnosing humans." A doctor enters, white coat starched, moustache trimmed, clipboard clutched like a security blanket. He offers a tight smile that says, "Don't panic," which immediately causes panic. Just a routine test, he assures you, adjusting knobs on the machine that definitely weren't in the medical brochure. Routine in the 1950s, you remind yourself, meant something between basic checkup and hope you signed a consent form because we didn't. You lower yourself onto the examination table. The paper crinkles under you, loud in the quiet room, loud enough to feel like evidence. The doctor adjusts a giant overhead lamp that beams light straight into your soul. He asks you to remain perfectly still, as if you were preparing for a portrait rather than a scan powered by experimental energy sources. Let's talk about medical research in this era. The 1950s were overflowing with scientific ambition and shockingly few guardrails. Hospitals tested early imaging machines, radiation devices, electromagnetic scanners, and tools that needed 3 scientists and a prayer to operate. Some tests worked brilliantly, some didn't. Some made your hair stand on end, literally or metaphorically, depending on the electrical current involved. The machine begins to hum louder. A vibration passes through the table. Your fingers tingle. Your thoughts rearrange themselves into a neat filing system, like your brain is trying to impress the equipment. A nurse peeks in and whispers to the doctor, who whispers back, "It's fine. The levels are normal." You'd feel better about that if either of them had checked a chart or a gauge, or made eye contact, or defined the word normal. The machine emits a soft ding, like a polite typewriter trying to greet you, then another louder ding, then a long whirring noise that suggests it is now downloading your dreams. You breathe deeply, slowly, imagining yourself floating above the table, like in one of those calming meditation tapes that won't be invented for another 20 years. The doctor scribbles on his clipboard with increasing urgency. "How are you feeling?" he asks. You want to say, "Like a science fair project, but you settle for okay." He nods. "Good." That's a normal response, which is exactly what someone would say if it weren't. The humming lowers to a gentle purr. The lights flicker. For a moment, everything is quiet, eerily quiet, like the machine is holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do next. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the test ends. The machine powers down with a satisfied sigh. The doctor nods approvingly, as if the entire process went exactly as expected, which does not reassure you in the slightest. You sit up slowly, testing your limbs, your thoughts, your general sense of self. Everything seems intact. Mostly. Hopefully. The doctor hands you a sheet of paper with your results, though half the page is redacted despite being your own medical record. As you walk back down the mint green corridor, nurses sweep past you, efficient and silent. You step outside into the fresh air, feeling both relieved and slightly rearranged. In the 1950s, that's the price of routine care. Sleep softly and try not to hum in the same frequency as the machine tonight. You're sitting in the dentist's office again, only this time they're oddly excited about collecting baby teeth. In the 1950s, scientists really did gather children's teeth to measure radioactive fallout, which is exactly as unsettling as it sounds. You clutch your jaw protectively, suddenly very aware that your molars might be the hottest commodity in town. The waiting room smells like mint, latex gloves, and faint scientific ambition. A stack of magazines sits neatly on the coffee table, articles about space exploration, efficient home ironing techniques, and smiling children holding up their lost teeth like trophies. Every magazine cover feels like a subtle recruitment ad. You sink deeper into your chair, feeling the springs groan sympathetically as you try to hide the lower half of your face behind a pamphlet titled "Healthy Teeth, Healthy Nation." A nurse steps out from behind the frosted glass door. She beams at the room with the practiced cheer of someone who absolutely knows more than she's allowed to say. Her clipboard is thick with forms. Her pockets are suspiciously full. "We're offering free lollipops today," she announces, "and for our young patients, a chance to contribute to important research." She emphasizes important the way someone might emphasize classified. You shift uncomfortably. Free lollipops are never just free. Let's talk about Operation Sunshine. During the Cold War, nuclear testing blanketed parts of the world with small amounts of radioactive fallout. Scientists needed to know how much was getting into people, especially children. But instead of measuring soil or air, they turned their attention to something else entirely. Baby teeth. Fallen out teeth were like little time capsules of exposure. And so, across the country, classrooms and dentists' offices turned into collection points. Back in the dentist's office, a mother beside you proudly hands her son's tooth to the nurse in a tiny envelope. The child beams, thinking he's helping science, or the tooth fairy, or both. The nurse gently places the envelope into a metal box labelled Sunshine Samples. You aren't sure if the smile she gives afterward is reassuring or deeply ominous. Your name is called. You stand. You swallow. You walk through the door as though heading into a courtroom where your teeth may testify against you. Inside, your dentist, Dr. Harwood, waits with the enthusiasm of a man who has recently been told his mundane profession now has national security implications. His glasses reflect the overhead light, making it impossible to tell whether he's looking at your eyes or your enamel. He invites you to sit, pats the chair like it's a loyal dog and says, "So, how are your teeth feeling today?" You lie. "Fine." He nods thoughtfully, which is never a good sign. "Wonderful, wonderful." Teeth tell us so much about the world, he says, adjusting his tools with almost ceremonial reverence. So much history in them, so much data. The drill whirs to life in the background, even though no one is using it. A tray slides closer on its metal arm. You notice 2 new containers labelled enamel studies and mineral analysis. You tighten your jaw. The muscles protest. Dr. Harwood inspects your mouth with a small mirror, humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like a lullaby designed to distract you from the concept of scientific harvesting. "Beautiful molars," he murmurs. "Strong, sturdy, very informative." You pull back slightly. He laughs gently. "Oh, don't worry, we don't need adult teeth." "Not yet." "Not yet." You stare at him, wide-eyed. He smiles the way only a man who owns too many forceps can smile. The exam goes on as usual, scraping, tapping, awkward mouth, breathing, but now you sense the underlying tension. Every tooth in your mouth has suddenly become a valuable asset, a tiny glowing treasure trove of Cold War data. You wonder if you should start sleeping with your jaw clenched. Finally he finishes the exam, removes his gloves, and hands you a sticker. "You did great," he says. "If you ever lose a tooth, naturally of course, bring it in. You'd be contributing to something bigger." You nod slowly, backing out of the room toward safety, where teeth remain inside mouths and scientists remain behind chalkboards. Outside, the sun glints off your smile, your enamel sparkles with innocence, and somewhere a researcher dreams of adding your molars to their collection. Sleep softly, and maybe don't wiggle any loose teeth tonight. You're enjoying a calm backyard afternoon when something shiny drifts overhead, wobbling suspiciously. A team arrives within minutes, wearing suits that look far too serious for meteorology. Official reports say weather balloon. Unofficially, everyone knows that's government code for don't ask questions unless you want a pamphlet on national loyalty. You lower your lemonade slowly, shielding your eyes against the sun as the object glints in the sky. A glimmering blob of metal and mystery bobbing through the clouds with all the grace of a confused airborne tortoise. It sways left, then right, then rotates as if trying to read your thoughts. You wave politely because you were raised right, and also because you're not entirely sure it doesn't have feelings. Your neighbour, Mr. Carter, bursts out of his back door holding binoculars so large they should require a permit. "It's happening again," he announces, which raises several questions, mainly again. He scans the sky with the intensity of a man who once saw something he couldn't explain and has been deeply, spiritually committed to spotting it a second time. The shiny object dips lower. Your lawn chair vibrates faintly. A dog, 3 houses over, begins barking in Morse code. That's when the black sedan arrives. It glides to a stop at the curb with the quiet menace of a shoe about to squash a bug. 4 people step out in identical grey suits, each wearing sunglasses thick enough to protect against both UV rays and accountability. They speak to no one, gesture sharply to the sky, and begin unspooling more equipment than should reasonably fit in one vehicle. Mrs. Henderson peers through her curtains so forcefully you fear the glass may fog up. Children gather at the edges of their yards like tiny scientists whispering theories. One suggests aliens, another suggests spycraft. A A third suggests super fancy weather balloon, which earns him immediate dismissal from the group. Let's pause and acknowledge what's happening. In the 1950s, anything strange in the sky was automatically a weather balloon, officially. Unofficially, however, it was code for, we saw something, it moved weird, we don't want to talk about it, and if you value your peaceful evening, maybe don't bring it up. Back in your yard, the shiny object dips further, wobbling like it's drunk on atmospheric pressure. The suited team fans out, one holding a device that clicks ominously, another scribbling notes, a third talking into a radio with the quiet panic of someone reporting that the situation has escalated from manageable to please send help. The object finally drifts close enough for you to make out details. Seams, panels, a faint humming from inside like a refrigerator filled with secrets. You take a step back. The suits take several steps forward. One of them gives you a polite but firm gesture that says, "Go inside." You pretend not to understand and inch closer anyway because curiosity is stronger than common sense. Mr. Carter whispers, "I bet this is one of those classified aviation tests. They say the government has crafts that can turn on a dime." He demonstrates with his hand, spinning it, dramatically. His hand does not turn on a dime. Neither historically do weather balloons. Suddenly the object jerks upward. The humming grows sharper. The sunlight catches its surface, illuminating a reflective panel that definitely contains writing not intended for civilian eyes. Before anyone can react, it shoots skyward with unnatural speed, far too fast for a balloon, unless balloons have started taking performance-enhancing substances. The suits relax in unison, shoulders dropping like deflated tires. One pulls out a clipboard and begins checking boxes. Another gives a thumbs up to the sky, as if congratulating the object on its escape. They gather their equipment, return to the sedan, and leave without a word, as though they just finished installing a sprinkler system instead of chasing an unidentified aerial anomaly. Within minutes, the street returns to normal. Children resume playing. Mrs. Henderson's curtains snap shut. Mr. Carter writes something in a notebook, labelled Skylog, Volume 3. You sit back down in your lawn chair, pick up your lemonade and stare at the peaceful blue sky, now suspiciously empty. The next morning, the newspaper headline reads, "Unusual weather balloon sighted. No cause for alarm." And maybe there isn't. But as you sip your coffee and glance upward, you can't help wondering, if that was a weather balloon, why did it seem so eager to leave? Sleep softly and keep an eye on the sky, just in case the weather gets interesting again. Hey guys, as we drift toward the end of tonight's journey, let's take one last sleepy stroll through the strange, shimmering landscape of the 1950s. The decade where everything looked perfect on the surface. But underneath, entire governments were quietly running experiments that would make your therapist blink twice. You've spent the night wandering through misty cities sprayed on purpose, mindful pigeons who may have been on payroll, dentists collecting suspiciously cheerful amounts of teeth, and research labs where just relax felt more like a warning than advice. And somehow, through all the secrecy, fog machines, classified clipboards, and glowing milk cartons, you still made it. That's the funny thing about history. Humans are endlessly resilient, even when our environment is creatively dangerous. People in the 1950s balanced all that Cold War tension with milkshakes, drive-in movies, and magazine ads where smiling families sat directly next to radioactive materials like it was nothing. They lived, they hoped, they laughed, and they tried their best to trust a world that was occasionally testing them in ways they didn't know about. So tonight, as you wiggle deeper into your warm blankets, maybe take a quiet moment to appreciate the little things we get to enjoy now, like water that isn't glowing, or milk that isn't part of an experiment, or pigeons who, probably, aren't collecting intelligence. You're stretched out in a clean bed, with no bacterial fog rolling past your window, no surprise sonic booms shaking your dishes, and no men in trench coats taking notes on how long it takes you to fall asleep. Your phone might be spying on you, but at least it says good morning. Let your muscles soften, let your breath slow down. Let the tension of the day dissolve, one sleepy exhale at a time. Because history may be full of strange twists, bold experiments, and decisions that aged about as well as a 1950s casserole, but it's also proof that people survive, adapt, and eventually create something better. So close your eyes and let yourself sink into the quiet. Feel the softness under you, the warmth around you, the peaceful stillness that people in every decade have longed for. And tonight, as you settle in safely, with indoor plumbing, clean air, untested snow, and absolutely no classified fog drifting past your door, maybe whisper a small thank you to the generations who lived through all the bizarre trial and error phases of history so you could rest a little easier. You're safe, you're warm, the experiments are over for the day, and sleep is waiting for you. Good night.